DFS Nation, what is up? What is happening? We are back again for a special show. No, it is not Thursday because Thursday is Thanksgiving, but we are here to talk about Thursday, and that is our annual traditional Thanksgiving slate breakdown. We are super excited once again to be bringing this to you. We got Maddie 2v2, Maddie Buckets, as Ryan would say. And joining us, it's just like family again. Family's back. The trio is back. The Wolf Pack is back. Ryan is back with us again. TFA OG. The man that was on Devontae Adams before. It was cool.
True.
But he was also on Mike Lennon. But that's another story for a different day.
I can't put this Walito donation up because it covers Ryan's entire face.
I love it. Anything for Walito, though. Let's go. Get after
Walito coming in with the super
chat.
His
avatar is the best.
With the emojis. With the emojis.
Yeah. Brandon Cook, awesome. DeAndre Swift.
Shout out Walito. We appreciate you, homie.
Yes, very much so. So, Ryan, Maddie, how we doing? How we living?
We living good, man. I mean, this is a tradition unlike any other. I think we talked about that the last time we were on. It's the Thanksgiving slate, man. Happy and grateful to be on with the TFA family, the DGen Nation family, the home away from home, as I like to call it. And excited here, man. I mean, I feel welcome in the home. Look at this with the overlay going. I mean, the boys hooked it up today. So we got a 3-game slate that we're going to probably take 2 hours to talk about, as we usually do with the three amigos. And we definitely got to make sure that we have time for, Kev's favorite segment, the Thanksgiving dishes that we're looking forward to, the prep that goes into everything leading up to the slate lock. And of course, we got my Bears on the slate as well. So lots to unpack here on the DGen Nation pod for the Thanksgiving slate. Maddie, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to eat some food and hopefully turn around this cold streak of a season we got going on here for me, myself. I know it's been, rough for a lot of people across multiple weeks, but man, I've never experienced a cold streak like this. So I'm hoping the Thanksgiving slate turns that around. Usually the Thanksgiving slate is good to us. Dan Arnold was born on this show. No matter what anybody tells you about they were the first ones to discover Dan Arnold, that is incorrect. We have the receipts of the night we played Dan Arnold at less than 1% ownership in primetime game. Was it Falcons Saints?
Saints.
Yep. And I think he even caught a touchdown that game. So we were going absolutely nuts when he was getting the pass game involvement early in the game. Like our chat was going nuts. So maybe we can come up with another play like that on this slate. So no, but happy to chop it up with both you guys. Ryan, it's good to have you back. Me and Kev get a little lonely at times, and sometimes I need help putting Kev in his place. So
I can imagine.
Good to have you back.
That's what we're here for, man. And don't forget about Antonio Gibson last year too. I mean, not quite the Dan Arnold play, but he was like the ultimate leverage play off of massive Zeke ownership in that late game, which was absolutely incredible to have. So I know we had some goodness happening last year in the chat, which I know is now Discord, but last year was Slack. Slack was lit. And it's always fun when you can start early too with the Deshaun Watson stacks in Houston in that early game. So hopefully we can get on some plays early and talk about some pivots that could be interesting as we get news throughout the day, which it's looking like this is going to be one of the biggest Thanksgiving news breaking slates that we've had, I think, probably doing the show ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you that are listening on podcast version, you guys can't see Ryan's FanDuel signage he has up behind him, but Ryan's going to pretty much take us through the FanDuel slate, which is probably a first for this podcast, but that's his new home now. And he's going to walk us through the FanDuel pricing and kind of talk to us about, the difference in scoring over at FanDuel compared to DraftKings. So definitely going to be a little bit longer of a pod for that reason, but definitely happy to have Ryan here to do that for us.
Come on, don't throw that shade out there. It's going to be a long pod regardless.
It is.
This is always,
it always is.
No,
this is what we talk about all the time. This is always the longest show ever, and it makes no damn sense because it's a 3-game slate, but we somehow make it last 2 or 3 hours every single time we go through this thing. So,
Sure.
I am contractually obligated to not say anything negative about FanDuel, so there will be no negative in the chat or on this show about FanDuel. FanDuel is awesome. We love FanDuel here, and we even have it on our overlay. So FanDuel is great. So
I love it. Chat's lit right now, too.
Ryan, I see you've got a Bears pullover on. You think the Nagy? You think that's hearsay, or you think it's legit?
No, I think
the Nagy rumors.
I think there's merit to it. We're talking about 100+ years of Bears history where they have not done an in-season firing. This is a year unlike any other. So, never say never, but, it is interesting that you have, the Nagy boo chants are getting out of hand here in Chicago. You also had Virginia McCaskey in the stands for that game last week. Heartbreaking loss, hearing that firsthand. It's going to be tough for him to make it through. It's going to be interesting to see how the team kind of responds. I know we've kind of talked about that in our side chat, just about how to take what's going on there, in a micro level as we will go through the slate. And it's only a 3-gamer, so it's not like we can really write off this game. It's the first game on the slate. But as far as Nagy goes, he's gone at the end of the season for sure. There's no way that they can bring him back in the current state. And I just think that, you're talking about going into the bye week after Thanksgiving. So, by December 5th, he might not be coaching for the Arizona game.
It sort of feels like that they didn't want that information to get out, like that.
Definitely not.
And obviously, because that gets out, now everybody's asking him about it.
Now he's denying it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm assuming he probably didn't have any idea. It was probably something internal that they were planning on doing. I'm sure he knew the writing was on the wall and that it was coming, which it should. He's a terrible head coach. I'm sorry. They did my man dirty too by at his own son high school football game out there chanting Nagy sucks or fire Nagy or whatever it was. That's pretty brutal. But regardless of that,
crazy.
So the Bears. And actually. I think this is a good segue to start this off because I'm going to play some Andy Dalton this week.
Oh, Jesus. You too? You on this too?
You and D, bro.
Hey.
Y'all are riding the pain train together.
Yeah,
5,500. He's going to carry no ownership. He's a capable quarterback. He's not, a god. He's not Josh Allen. He doesn't have that type of ceiling, but he doesn't really need it at that price tag. And I think you can pair him with a couple of his pass catchers. One that I think will be a little bit under-owned and shouldn't be. And I really like Andy Dalton. Over on DraftKings, he's 5,500. So, if we look at some of the quarterbacks, we have Josh Allen at 7,800, Dak Prescott at 69, Derek Carr at 5,900, Trevor Siemian at 5,600, Andy Dalton at 5,500. And then it sounds like Jared Goff is going to play at 5,100, but you couldn't pay me enough to pay Jared Goff. He has been so bad this year, but so those are kind of the quarterbacks. And I think for me, I think most of the ownership is going to go towards Josh Allen. There's not like a ton of guys on this slate where I feel like that it's going to make it really hard to build. And I think you're going to see a lot of people play Josh Allen. And I think Dak Prescott obviously will come in second, especially if CeeDee Lamb plays. I don't think there's going to be a lot of ownership on this game. I think you'll see some one-offs of, possibly a Darnell Mooney because of his price tag or a DeAndre Swift, at the running back position. But I don't think a lot of people are really going to play a lot of this game. And I think that's a mistake. And I think Andy Dalton, I think he has 20-point upside in him. So.
Yeah, He does. So like with Andy Dalton, it's like, what are you hoping? Because it's a 3-game slate. So I mean, we don't have too many guys that we necessarily need to jam in, which is what would make me want to play a guy like Andy Dalton. Like Dak Prescott and Josh Allen could double his score at the quarterback position, which would really, hurt you having those teams. And I get it. He makes sense for a cheap stack. You can play Mooney, you can play Goodwin if you want. You can play Cole Kmet at the tight end position, which, I'm sure we'll talk about as we get into these other games. But you're talking about, they already played this team once. I think it was Justin Fields who quarterbacked that game. It wasn't Dalton in week 4. And Dalton before that, there wasn't otherworldly. I mean, this team has only put up, I think they're implied for 22.5 points. They've only scored more than 22 points twice on the season already. They have a full week now that Dan Campbell and co have to, or I guess half the week to prepare. But unlike last week where he just comes into the game and just catch Baltimore off guard and he can hit a couple broken plays, Marquis Goodwin on a double move, that's what really got people excited about him. And it's just like, I can't really justify playing him on this slate with the other guys. I mean, I think as gross as it might sound, the way that this defense is playing, like there could be more merit to playing Jared Goff than Andy Dalton this week, which I mean, I would not do, but I'm just saying if you're already looking down in that realm, I'd be more apt to do that. I mean, if you could talk yourself into playing Trevor Siemian, at least you have the PMR on your side but because it's gonna feel real. You're gonna be really hurting looking at lineups where you decided to play Andy Dalton at quarterback with the other 2 games left. If this guy only goes out and gets like 15 or 18, like 18, I think is probably where you're going to feel good about you got out of that game with him having, because it's a smash spot for Montgomery, I guess, which I'd say all that to bury the lead, which Montgomery, he's 7,500 on our.
It's a great spot for Montgomery for sure.
That's just kind of where I come in at. It's like Montgomery is so mispriced on the slate for what he's seeing. And it's just such a good matchup for him that I'm just going to try and capture the touchdown upside through him. And that's, I think on the 3-game slate, that's what we want, right? Just let's get the touchdowns and see what we can rock with.
I feel like that at least with Josh Allen, if you play him, while you're correct that there's not a ton of pay up spots, but I feel like once you play Josh Allen, and then you're most likely you're going to pair him with Diggs.
Right. And that's the thing.
So then at running back, you kind of get into very specific type of build or specific type of path when you play somebody like Josh Allen, right? And don't get me wrong, like I've said, like Josh Allen is a great play, and it's a great matchup against the Saints secondary. Like that's not what I'm saying, and I'll definitely have some Josh Allen, but I feel like that Andy Dalton is different enough, and there are question marks. I mean, Josh Allen, we have to be real. Josh Allen has looked terrible the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. I mean, that offense does not look the same, and so I mean, that could go sideways. We have Dak, who 2 of the last 3 weeks has not played well. And if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play, then I think you have really some red flags there with playing him. Because now you're looking at Cooper, or now you're looking at Cedric Wilson and Michael Gallup, as his pass catchers, and Noah Brown, And so I think that that with Dalton, it allows you to kind of play whatever it is you want throughout the rest of it. And I love Darnell Mooney, Mr. 16 targets last week. And so,
right.
And so that's just why I feel like with this slate, like it is a 3-game slate, but we're going to have to figure out a way to get a little bit different here too. And I know there's some other ways we can do that. And maybe, it is playing Josh Allen, but instead of playing Diggs, you don't play Diggs and you play Manny Sanders or Gabriel Davis or Dawson Knox. Like there's some different ways you can do this. Beasley. I like Andy Dalton because I do think he has 300 passing yard upside. I think he does have, 2 or 3 touchdown upside. I think is within the realms of possibility for this team, or for him. So I just don't hate going to him either. And so, because the one thing I'll say this too with David Montgomery, because I would not play them together, is David Montgomery has no pass catching upside, like zero. He has three targets over the last since he's come back, right? Like he has zero pass catching upside, and so that worries me a little bit with him. To
be fair, Kev, you got let's talk about the situation though. You're talking about Justin Fields being back there at quarterback, and
you're right.
He hasn't been as apt to dump it off as Andy Dalton had in the past with David Montgomery.
Yeah.
So we could see that equity, come back into fruition, especially if we don't get Damian Williams like we haven't the past couple of weeks, and they're not running Khalil Herbert. I mean, he's seen like 30 out of 35 of the running back touches, like since he's been back from the injury he was dealing with. So we know that he has a hold on this backfield. And if they are in a script, he's going to be out there. And I think he could definitely see some pass catching work. So I guess, my whole point around the offense too, Kev, is not to say that, like, I think Andy Dalton starting makes all of these pieces on the Bears more palatable, because we know that, we've seen that he is at least competent in throwing the deep ball. And I mean, I love Justin Fields more than the next guy. This isn't an indictment on Fields. It's just that, as a veteran guy, he can come in here, lead this team. That makes me love Mooney that much even more. That makes me feel confident in playing David Montgomery, because I think they can have chances against this defense that's not competent. If you want to take a shot on Goodwin, I guess that makes sense with them, and you can get exposure to this offense without having to tie it to that quarterback uncertainty. So I do like the pieces in this game. I'm just necessarily not going to do that. And especially, on FanDuel here, where we have, Dak Prescott's only $1,000 more than Andy Dalton on this slate. You can pay up just a couple more hundred to get to Josh Allen. So I think when you're talking about touchdown equity, that's where I got to look at those two guys first.
What do you think, Manny? Are you playing Darnold or
Let's get Darnold on the slate.
So something that concerns me, and I don't know. See, this is the part where the uncertainty kind of steps in terms of what the coaches are going to want to do with Dalton. Because, I mean, last week, right, he stepped in and he continued to operate that field style of passing attack where he was targeting guys deep. Because we didn't see that from Dalton early in the year, right? Like, it was literally just dink and dunk. Right. If you look at week one, Andy Dalton threw 38 times in a game they trailed to the Rams the entire game, and not a single receiver had over 43 air yards in that game. The highest ADOT was 7 yards. And so it's like, what am I going to get out of Dalton? Am I going to get this new style of deep passing that Fields had unlocked for the Bears? Because, I mean, Fields came in his first two or three starts. There was three of like the Bears receivers, Mooney, Kmet, and Allen Robinson, were like leading the NFL in ADOT. And so it was like it was a completely different style of passing attack. And so I'm just
is that just the Fields that did that, or do we think that's because that Nagy's no longer calling the plays and now Bill Lazor's calling the plays?
That's what. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the unknown for me. I don't,
Right.
Can you confidently project it's one or the other? Because I mean, I don't know that I can. And like you guys said, David Montgomery, he played like 93% of the snaps or 95% of the snaps last week. So he's literally the only running back that's out there. And he's going to be the highest on running back on the slate. And we just saw the same style of roster construction this past week with AJ Dillon. And the ultimate leverage that, nobody ended up on was like less than 5% owned across the entire passing stack on either side was Green Bay, Minnesota. That game broke the slate. And obviously Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and MVS and Justin Jefferson, that is a completely different realm of talent than Andy Dalton and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. But, if you're going to go with Andy Dalton, I just think you got to go all in and hope you get, a 33-30 type game out of that game. Because if it's low scoring, they're just gonna give they're gonna give Montgomery, as many carries as he can handle. Because
Right.
like you guys said, his targets have kind of fallen off this year. But with Dalton coming back, I do think that they will go up a little bit. But I mean, he still hasn't exceeded 4 targets in a game yet this year. So I mean, that part is concerning. But we've seen him get up to 23 carries. In the last time they played against Detroit, it was a 24-14 game. He had 23 carries for 106 yards and 0 targets. So, I just think you need to go with a game flow. And if you want to be different and play Andy Dalton, I just think you hope that that game is the game of this slate. And neither defense shows up, which is very possible. I mean, both these defenses and secondaries are atrocious, but the question is, can the offenses that are also atrocious be good enough to put points on the scoreboard? So all of that to say, I probably won't end up on Andy Dalton, but I mean, it's probably the best leverage on the slate, considering the fact that 80% of the rosters are going to have David Montgomery.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen Detroit too. Detroit has been competitive pretty much all year. Like we keep every week it's like, oh, Detroit's going to get smashed. Detroit's going to, and they don't. Like they keep it. And so my question is, what is the probability that Detroit could come out and get up, a 2-touchdown lead quickly, in the first half over Chicago and take? I mean, I think that's definitely in the range of possibility, and that happens. Now all of a sudden that changes things where David Montgomery isn't getting all these touches, or at least these carries. Maybe they use them more in the passing game, which would be a plus. But I think that's also in the range of possibility here. I mean, this Detroit team has not been good this year, but they have not been it's not like they just been getting destroyed every week. They have kept every game close. They are only a 3.5 point underdog here in this game. So it's not like that Chicago's out here at an 8, 9, 10 point favorite here. So this very well could go in a different direction, where all of a sudden, if David Montgomery doesn't pay off here, which is possible, especially if he doesn't still continue to get utilized in the passing game, then I think that it's just another solid leverage here, because I think it's possible that the Lions could get out early. Lions still have DeAndre Swift.
It is.
The Bears have been really bad against the pass this year. There's actually somebody on the other side that I really like as well. I don't think a lot of people are going to play Lions wide receivers, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown makes a lot of sense. He plays 70% in the slot. He does only have a 14% target share in this offense, but Kendall, Vilder, is fucking terrible. 70% completion percentage, 541 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, and 138.8 passer rating allowed. And so I like Amon-Ra St. Brown on that other side. I don't know if I can bring myself to fully game stack this, but I do like if I'm going to play Dalton, going.
I think you have to.
Just go all in.
Right.
You have to. If you're playing Dalton, you have to, because you can build with Josh Allen as your quarterback. You can build teams that only leave one of the studs out. Like, that's how soft the pricing is, at least on DraftKings. And Ryan can talk to us about FanDuel pricing, but where it looks like Andy Dalton's a little more expensive over there. He's closer in price to the Derek Carrs and Dak Prescott.
He's 74?
7,200.
Yeah, 7,200 over there on FanDuel, where you have Josh Allen at 8,800, Dak Prescott at 8,200, 7,400 for Derek Carr.
Yeah, so at least, Ryan, you can talk about FanDuel builds, but I mean, I've played around myself with some DraftKings builds, and it is very easy to fit in Diggs, Montgomery, Josh Allen, especially if CeeDee Lamb is out. You can get to Gallup, you can get to Cedric Wilson. He opens up a ton of value. You can play any of the tight ends pretty much. And it's just like, if that build is going to fail, like the Josh Allen build is going to fail, you need or get it exceeded by this Andy Dalton stack you're going to have. You need that game to be the game of the day.
Right.
You need to have a 35-30 type game going into the Dallas and Raiders game. And like I said, it's definitely possible. These defenses are bad enough that it is possible. The concern is, are these bad offenses able to get us there? So I think if you're playing Dalton, you just got to Dalton, Swift, Hawkinson, Mooney,
Yep.
maybe even Komet, Marquis Goodwin. You just load it. You just load it up, and because the way Dalton gets there is, maybe Swift houses a 60-yard touchdown right off the bat, and then maybe Chicago answers quickly with a quick strike to Goodwin or Moody down the sideline, and all of a sudden we've got a 7-7 game with 9 minutes left in the first quarter, and then Detroit feels like they got to keep their foot on the gas. So, they're targeting Hawkinson over the middle over and over again, which Chicago's not been good against tight ends. So I just think, that if you're going to go that route, just go all in.
Yeah, and I'm more of a single injury player, Maddie. I know you usually only play.
Yeah, I'm going to have one team this week.
Three teams. You're going to have one team. So that's what makes it hard for me to kind of condone Dalton on the one hand, especially over on FanDuel, because there's just so many more spots that you can kind of get to and probably get more equity on the points side of things. I think the other thing too, which we'll talk about with these other two games, is that, like we said at the beginning, there's so much injury news that we don't know about. Like, what happens if you play Dalton and CeeDee Lamb's ruled out and Zeke's ruled out? Like, what are you doing with that salary that you didn't use to pay up on a quarterback that could just outscore Dalton? That's going to really suck to be in those late games. And you could force in, I guess, Diggs, and maybe you play two tight ends with Waller, and like you already played Hawkinson possibly in the stack. But if those guys don't hit, which I think we'll talk about it with Buffalo game, and I get it. Diggs can get there. He had the 33 game last week or whatever he put up. But that's been few and far between for him. If this ends up being Sanders week, or Cole Beasley's getting the targets, or Dawson Knox is leading this team in targets, Buffalo is just one of those weird teams where and the Saints are so good at pass defense with Lattimore being on the other side, he could be shut out too. So then you're missing the two top tier wide receivers on the slate with just so much salary that could be left. That is the other thing that kind of worries me, is that I don't want to be sitting there, with $5K left in salary with no place to use it in these last two games.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, you look at Josh Allen's game logs, at least on DraftKings. If you throw out his 12-point game, his next lowest is 18, and he's got games in mid-30s as well. And we've seen him approach 40, and so you think about Andy Dalton and what's a somewhat good game for Andy Dalton, right? That's probably 18 points. And you're like, okay, on a normal slate, I could live with that. And that's pretty much Josh Allen's floor. So that's why I say, if you're going to play Dalton, you need to get a less than 1% outcome out of him. And you need a 25, 26, 27 point game out of him. Because the salary is just there's enough value here that the salary is going to, make it to where if Josh Allen scores 25 points, he's going to be on the optimal. Because, everybody's going to have him, and the salary works that you're not really giving up much elsewhere. So that's why I say, if that's the route you're going, you need to have duds from Allen and Dak and Derek Carr that, less than 20 points. And you need that Bears-Lions game to just go nuclear and just hope and pray that Andy Dalton is the highest scoring quarterback on the slate. Because, like I said, salary, you kind of have to throw out. He's a value this week because there is a lot of value because of all these injuries.
Right. And real quick, Kev, I just wanted to say a couple of things. One was that I disagree. I think the ultimate leverage play, if you are looking to stack this game, is by having Dalton and Montgomery both on that team. Because we just saw, and I'm not going to compare these guys from the status standpoint, but on a primetime slate last week where we just had the Chargers and the Steelers game that went bananas. You needed to have in the primetime slate Eckler and Herbert. If Dalton passes a touchdown to Montgomery and this dude rushes it in, and he scores, 3 or 4 times, Dalton that is, and Montgomery scores twice, these could be two guys that are just ultimate leverage. Because like you're saying, Maddie, nobody is going to want to play these two guys together. They're going to look at it as an if-then kind of thing. And this is kind of a decent game environment. Again, they're both bad defenses on the other side. So by taking these plays, I think Swift is an awesome play on this slate. We don't know what's going to happen with Kamara. We don't know what's going to happen with Zeke, but we know that Swift has been out there and this dude is getting, work, especially if we don't have Jamal Williams. I don't know what his status is, but I know it's kind of been kind of dicey the past couple of weeks, but Swift, his pass catching work has been down, but then you're looking at the ground game and this dude is just getting all of the touches. And against a team like this, like Devonta Freeman last week, this is Devonta Freeman we're talking about. This dude was dicing up this defense with Huntley back there. And Jared Goff, we know he's not a confident quarterback. He's not a high A-dot guy. So he could just be peppering, Swift early on, and he could be just like an ultimate play. TJ Hawkinson, again, back with Goff, could be a good play. So I do think that there is some merit in multi-entering. Like if you are just going to talk about Dalton, then definitely just game stacking this game, taking both running backs. Like who's going to do that from this game, I think is interesting. The other thing that I wanted to talk about too is just these two teams just not being in contention. And like, we know that Dallas needs a win. We know that Buffalo needs a win just because of the state of where their divisions are. So like, that's another thing that makes me interested in playing those games a little bit more because there's a lot more riding on them than there is in this Bears Lions game, for whatever that's worth. And the other thing too, before I toss it back to you, Kev, is that there is a play on the Lions who I think would be an ultimate play on your guys' site that you play on, and that's Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was signed by the Detroit Lions. This guy has played with Jared Goff in the past, and he saw like 90 whatever % of the snaps last week. He only saw 3 targets, but being teamed back up with Jared Goff, that was with Boyle. Like, who is thinking about playing Josh Reynolds this week? Nobody. And Josh Reynolds at his price tag, I know Kev was talking about Amon St. Brown, and he's been kind of decent, but Khalif Raymond, they haven't had too many wide receiver scores that have been at the top. Quintez Cephas hasn't been in the picture. So Josh Reynolds coming in, just being signed in, having that connection with Goff, I think is an awesome, awesome leverage play on Detroit that nobody would have. Like you're talking about playing him over a guy like Cedric Wilson or Cole Beasley in those later games. And if he goes off, and what do we talk about with receivers? Like if this dude, somehow finds his way to, 90 yards, 100 yards and a score at his price, like forget whatever else you're doing. Like that is a play that it makes tough to play on FanDuel. But if you're looking at, kind of stacking that game up, he would be an interesting piece to have.
Well, you stole my thunder for later, but yep, completely agree with what you said with Josh Reynolds. I think he does make some sense. So let me ask you this, because obviously whenever we do this show, it's always on the main slate, right? And so you have far more options and everything else. This is a 3-game slate. Maddie, you said you're only playing one team. If you're going to play, so let me ask this: if you're going to play, let's say Josh Allen, let's say that he's going to be on your one team. I don't know if he is; it doesn't really matter if he is, but let's say he is, and he's probably going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate. What do you do, to get different with your lineup if you're going to be running let's say a stack that's going to be the chalk? Where do you get leverage on the field?
So something we see on these smaller slates that I don't think enough people account for is just absolutely loading up on an offense. So Ryan talked about, Dalton and Montgomery, which, makes a ton of sense together, because if the Bears score 35 points and you play Dalton and Montgomery, you get the entire 35 points, no matter how it's scored, right? Whether it's rushing, whether it's receiving, whether it's they throw to each other, you get it all. And so when we talk about, these short slates, everybody wants to get the one receiver from the first game that they think can go off. Everybody wants to get the one receiver or tight end from the second game that they think can go off. And so they've got, all of a sudden, their roster looks like, they don't want to miss out on each game, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas, on a main slate, we can sit there and cross, a handful of games off and just say, I'm not going to play anybody from these games. Let me just get my exposure to these other games. And so I think that's something that goes overlooked is people are going to play Josh Allen and they're probably going to play Stefan Diggs. I don't know if they will add in, Dawson Knox and Cole Beasley and just go, 3 pass catchers with Josh Allen. So that's something that I'd be looking to do is just, if you're playing Josh Allen, just go all in. and really plant your flag on Josh Allen crushing, and he takes multiple guys there with him. And I mean, if that happens, Stefan Diggs can still be optimal on a 3-game slate, getting only 20 fantasy points. And we've seen, one of Cole Beasley or Emmanuel Sanders get to 20 fantasy points. And we've seen Dawson Knox continue to crush every single week in and week out this year. He's pretty much a lock for 10 to 15 fantasy points this year. And he's going to go overlooked because everybody's going to play Darren Waller and everybody's going to play Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys game. So I think that's a way to be different. I think everybody is going to try to get these individual pieces, these big name studs from these other games. And I think, if you're, playing one team and want to be really different in tournaments and you're set on Josh Allen, which, makes a ton of sense, right? New Orleans is a pass funnel defense and the Bills are a pass funnel offense. So, I mean, it pretty much lines up for everything Buffalo is going to want to do. And so, just bank on 50 Josh Allen pass attempts, and just hope that, he carries 3 guys there with him. And it's not just one guy, because we tend to see a lot of people just skinny stack, one QB, one wide receiver, one opposing wide receiver, tight end. So that's what I'm going to try to force myself to do if I end up going with Josh Allen. I haven't decided yet, but that's the approach I try to take on these shorter slates.
Kev's pondering your thoughts.
No, I mean, I would tend to agree with you. The other thing I wanted to hit on too was utilizing late swap, because we don't really.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think people really utilize it enough, whether it's on a main slate, but especially on something like this. I think you should probably look at each game, like game 1. All right, now review your lineups before game 2. Right. And see where you're at, or how if you're, I mean, if you only have one lineup, it's probably a little bit different. But if you're somebody that mass multi-enters, or you're going to enter a bunch of different lineups, I think the majority of people would do that. Going through and taking a look at each one of your lineups and seeing if there's any changes that need to be made. Especially if you have, let's say you do play Dalton and Dalton doesn't really work out. Let's say Dalton only gets 15 or whatever, right? And he doesn't really hit as like we want. I think it's super smart to go back and look, and maybe, or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's, let's say you play DeAndre Swift to David Montgomery or one of them and didn't do anything, and your lineup is not looking great. I think it's very smart at that point to maybe go to late swaps like Trevor Siemian and Traquan Smith or something for lineups that look like they could be possibly dead. Because at that point, if they hit, then boom, you're probably going to cash. You're not going to have a great day, but you're still going to be able to cash with those lineups. And I think that's something that more people should do, because a lot of people do not really utilize late swaps, especially on something like this, especially because it's Thanksgiving, you're hanging out with your family, and all this other stuff. So you're not paying as much of attention. You're trying to, hang out with the family and do all this other stuff. But I think utilizing late swap is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've got a dead spot from the early game, and you've got Josh Allen, well, everybody else ahead of you already has Josh Allen, so you can't catch them. So I mean, and it's not about at that standpoint, it's not about what you think is going to happen anymore. It's about just being unique, right? Like let's use this past weekend, right? The Arizona Seattle game, for example. Let's say 1:00 games, you're drawing dead, and you're like, well, screw it. Let me just throw in Colt McCoy. And he goes out and throws for 350 or whatever yards and multiple scores. And I'll pair him with Zach Ertz. And all of a sudden you have the slate winning combo at 0.01% ownership, right? So it's like at that point, just throw your predetermined builds out the window and just play something that's unique if you end up with a dead spot. Now, if it's only one dead spot, like let's say DeAndre Swift gets you like 10 points and he's the only guy you played, then I think it's okay to not fully just blow up your build. But if it's like, you stacked up Chicago and Detroit, maybe you played Swift and Hawkinson and ran it back with, Montgomery or Mooney on the other side, and those guys only combined for 25 to 30, then yeah, I would consider doing something off the wall, like playing Trevor Siemian. But yeah, I completely agree, Kev. It's something that's underutilized on a normal main slate, but definitely as well on a Thanksgiving slate when nobody's really paying attention to that stuff. More so stuffing their faces with food.
And I also think just even if you're at the top and you have a team that looks great going into that final game, looking at it and saying, okay, you could pretty much usually tell if you're, especially when you get really high up, kind of who people have to have some sort of idea of who they may have. And if there's 10 teams ahead of you at that point, and it looks like you have the same players, like you're dead, like you're not moving anywhere. So you have to late swap at that point and move off some stuff, or else you have no shot at winning. And so that's another aspect of late swap that that doesn't really get talked about as much either. That should be, because that you definitely should be. You should be looking to see what people have, kind of paying attention to what because like I said, you can pretty much have a pretty good idea of looking at what's left on a team and make a pretty good judgment of who those players are, and then you're going to know where you stand.
Yeah, 1,000%, man. And it's like, if you're only like Maddie's only playing one lineup, there's one thing to focus on, but you can't be playing multiple lineups if you're not in tune to what's going on. Like you gotta, and it doesn't have to be necessarily all day. That's the great thing about NFL is we got that kind of buffer between games. You got 3 hours. So make sure when you're eating dinner, and you can take that 15, 20, 30-minute break before the next game to kind of go in, okay, who's active, who's not, make my changes, and then let it ride. And then maybe something happens in the very late game. That's going to be the Saints side of things, possibly, with all the starters they have banged up. So make sure you can see what's going on after that. Like, you have to be in tune. You can't just be like, all right, I'm going to set it in the morning and I'm gonna just let it ride out, because it could be the difference between even cashing, depending on what kind of pivots you can make, depending on how you draw in that fair game, or the difference between banking a tournament. Like, if you hit on everything early, and then normally we would tell people to go chalk. Like, if you're you have those plays that are 1 or 2% owned, and then you hit on those, okay, just go chalk. But chalk would be Zeke. What if Zeke's ruled out? Maybe Kamara's ruled in, and you can pay that extra price to get up to him and not play Diggs, but play Waller or play, somebody else who is in that price range. I think it makes a ton of sense just to be in tune with the slate if you're playing multiple lineups. And
I remember last year, I'm pretty sure it was last year, where I remember all day we weren't sure if Julio was going to play. And then right before the slate happens, he got ruled out.
Yeah.
And right before the game happens, he got ruled out. And that, really kind of changed everything of what you were going to do.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I think. And you were on whoever that backup was. Was it Christian Blake? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Always got to have
Who ate that game at whatever his ownership percent was, which wasn't as high as it should be. It was like
nothing. It was very low. It was very low. So, anyways, okay. So we kind of have sort of talk. I guess the only ones we really have. So let's talk about some of the other quarterbacks really quickly, so we can jump over to running backs. We haven't really talked about Dak. Let's just assume that CeeDee Lamb is going to play. How much interest are you going to have in Dak with CeeDee Lamb in this offense versus
also? Ryan, you can go first, but I'll preface this with saying Zeke practiced in full today.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So assume Zeke is in.
Yeah, I love that. We want Zeke playing on the slate. This will probably be 2.0 from me last year, where Zeke ends up being the highest owned running back on the slate, and I just don't play him. He's
going to come in second highest owned behind Monty. But yeah.
Okay. Yes.
He's going to be
fair enough. Fair enough. Yes. Second highest owned behind Monty. But yeah, I mean, not to be a victim of what the game logs are. And I haven't watched too many Dallas Cowboy games. Maddie, that's your team. I know you watch, but just watching this team against Kansas City last week, and it's like they are fine. And granted, knee injury, so he's dealing with that. But they are fine with just giving him a certain amount of touches and then being like, we need to spell you. We need to keep you healthy. Whether that be, this team is primed to be in the playoffs and make a run late, and they want Zeke as healthy as he could be. And it's just like, we'll get through. Tony Pollard's competent, whatever that is. Like, this is just not a slate that I want to load up on Zeke. I mean, the touches just aren't there. Like, I'd rather play Swift at his price tag. I mean, I don't think Kamara would play, but if he were to play, like, I'd just much rather play him if there was some time or some chance of him getting ruled in. And I'm going to have Montgomery pretty much on every team that I make. It's just hard to get away from where his price tag is coming in across the industry. So he can get there. And we've seen him, have multi-score games, but it's like he's not hitting 100 yards, So what happens if those scores don't go to him? And even then, like, I would just much rather I'm going to play Dak this week. I think Dak is my number one quarterback, and that's with or without CD Lamb in. And Zeke being in, I can just use Dak as the ultimate leverage off of a popular Zeke, who, Dak will still be the second highest owned quarterback, but he just isn't doing enough for me to warrant where his ownership percent is going to come in, just on the fact that he is a stud, quote unquote, running back, and we got to pay for the studs. Like, I mean, honestly, you could play Montgomery and wait to see what happens throughout the day. If Kamara and Ingram, who both haven't been practicing, don't play, I mean, Tony Jones is you just lock and load this play. This is Jeff Wilson from last week. Like, I don't care what his own ownership ends up being in it, because it's the last game. It's going to be lower than it should be. But this guy could be the lead back in an offense that he has no competition around him with. And that I'll just roll that out. not 10 out of 10 times and just carry that. There's so many other plays. I mean, Lamb plays, I'll play him over Zeke. I want to have exposure to Diggs. I want to be able to pay up at tight end, and I want to pay up at quarterback. I'm just not going to get builds that have Zeke. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to run out 50 teams and have 0% of him, but I'll have like 10% of it, and he'll come in at whatever it is, 50% on a 3-game slate, and I'll just be way underweight.
Yeah, so I think as of right now, the ownership projections are kind of saying that Zeke's going to come in around the 50% that you're saying, and Dak's going to be half that, because Josh Allen's going to come in around 50% at QB. So, I mean, this is pretty much the same exact spot we had with Green Bay, Minnesota last week, right? And we kind of talked about leverage with that Chicago-Detroit game, but I mean, this is leverage with a top-of-the-league passing attack. And if it's only Amari Cooper out, that's not enough to be out for me to really knock down Dak, multiple pegs. I mean, we saw he kind of looked lost a little bit last week against Kansas City, but probably the biggest news is Tyron Smith is back practicing in full. So,
love that.
And that offense is completely different when he is at left tackle. And we saw the Kansas City front line last week just had no issues getting to Dak. Dak, he made a couple bad throws, like the first throw of the game to Gallup. He had him wide open, 25 yards, 30 yards down the right sideline. He just missed him, overthrew him. And from there, you just kind of got the feeling that, it was going to be one of those games. But he also had, really good throws that he made. Like there was like a 25-yarder to Cedric Wilson over the middle of the field. And Cedric was afraid he was going to get blown up and kind of short-armed it and ended up dropping it. But, I mean, this offense is still going to be explosive, right? Like, and you know where the ball's going. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb, it's going to be Cedric Wilson, Michael Gallup, and Dalton Schultz, right? So it's a four-man kind of ordeal. And, I mean, if everybody's going to play Zeke's only got 2 games this year with more than 17 carries. And he's only got 3 games this year with more than 3 targets. So kind of like you said, Ryan, they're just they're happy with Tony Pollard playing, 40% of the snaps, 35% of the snaps. And when Pollard's in, he's getting touches and he looks good, quite frankly. And, that's another way to get leverage too, that we can talk about, at the running back position, is playing Tony Pollard instead of playing Zeke. And I mean, how many times we just saw it with the Falcons last week, but how many times do we see these teams on Thursdays just kind of not go with their starter that they normally go with for a full allotment of his normal touches, right? And they kind of make it, even though they're already going with a committee, it's more of a committee on Thursdays because it's only a 3-day turnaround and Zeke's dealing with a knee injury. And it's like, you've got 10 days. If you just don't run him into the ground, you've got 10 days for him to heal and get right for this next game. And Tony Pollard, they are more than confident in giving him touches. So I mean, quite frankly, he pretty much looks better than Zeke does. So, like, it's really not a drop off at all in that offense, and he can catch passes too. I mean, he returns kicks. Like, that's just kind of the style of player he is. He's explosive. So, I mean, even if Pollard only gets 12 touches, I mean, that's not to say he can't house a 40-yarder against a very, very bad Las Vegas run D, which we saw Joe Mixon just torch last week. So, I think this Cowboys game is really interesting from a leverage standpoint. And there's a lot of ways you can go. And I think if people are already, kind of committing to builds now, we don't have CeeDee Lamb news and he's got that Q tag and nobody really knows whether he's going to play. And I think that's going to lower his ownership inherently. And we're going to see him come in way lower than he should. Everybody is just going to plug in Diggs. And they're going to say, okay, I know Diggs is playing. Let me play him. I don't know if CeeDee Lamb's playing, so let me just play Monty instead. And let me play Josh Allen. And all of a sudden, people aren't getting to CeeDee Lamb. So I think this Dallas game really presents a ton of leverage. And, it's eerily similar to the Green Bay game from last week where everybody played A.J. Dillon because it was a he can't fail kind of spot. He's going to see, 90% of the touches, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers – MVS and Devontae Adams go nuclear, and it causes Jefferson to go nuclear on the other side. Right. So,
on a guy that people think that they can't win DFS with. I mean, nobody thought you could win with Aaron Rodgers at DFS.
It's crazy,
right? That's the narrative.
I mean, he can throw 4 touchdowns every time he steps on the field, and so can Dak Prescott. So it's one of those spots where you're making a leverage play with somebody who's actually really good at football. As opposed to, we can't really say the same about Andy Dalton and the Bears, right? Like that offense is way less confidence have in playing those guys as compared to loading up on Dallas, which is a top 3 offense in the NFL. And like I said, even without Amari Cooper, they're still dangerous enough that, they've got guys that can make plays.
Dude, and it's all just Kev, I saw you real quick. I just was gonna say it's all just about recency bias. Like this is the ultimate recency bias Thanksgiving slate, and I'm so happy that game against Kansas City went the way that it did because I was looking ahead and saw that the Cowboys are playing the Raiders. And if that game goes any differently, even if they still lose, but it's a shootout, the Cowboys are the mega chalk of the week. It's not even a question. Everybody's jamming in everybody's jamming in Dak. They're jamming in CeeDee Lamb. They're jamming in Gallup or Wilson. It doesn't matter. Wilson's dropping passes still don't matter because you're thinking there's upside with them. Schultz is the ultimate tight end play. This team their ownership would be egregious on a 3-game slate with the question marks that we have at Buffalo. And everybody just wants to go Buffalo. And you can play, Dak and CD and Schultz, whatever you want to do with that Dak stack. And the best part about that, Maddie, and Kev, is you can just, if that game hits, you are just chilling in the late game. You could just have Tony Jones or you could have one of those pass catchers on Buffalo and, take a shot. But if those guys go out and if CeeDee Lamb gets 30, Dak gets 30, Schultz somehow gets 20, that doesn't matter. What that does. Josh Allen's going to go out and get 40. I mean, maybe Diggs is going to go out and get 40. It's possible. But on the range of outcomes, you're sitting there and you're just chilling while everybody else who has a team that still has PMR left, but they're going to be chasing those 30-point scores and sitting there. And that's what they need to have happen in order to win. And you're already going to be possibly sitting pretty at the top. Granted that maybe you get 1 or 2 plays that you might need or want to have in that last game, but you would have already had 7 of 9 pieces that you have gotten right. And that's just such a good feeling. And that's what I want to be on. If these pieces are going to go under owned, then they should be. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is a smash play. I won't have a team without him if he's ruled in, because his range of outcomes of just absolutely dominating the slate in that game environment. When this is the same thing from last week. Everybody wanted to play him last week. He was a cash game play last week on a main slate, and on a 3-game slate, people are going to have question marks. It's a concussion. It's not an ankle. It's not an ACL. This dude is if he's playing, he's going out there and he's playing. And that's just a good that's a good feeling when you see a spot like that, that it just makes so much sense. Again, this is all on paper, and maybe I'm talking too much about it and it will fail. So whatever. But it's just, there's so much leverage to be had. And I'm so happy that we're getting even question marks at this point in the week now with Dallas around their passing attack, when this team has consistently put up 30-point games all year.
I could actually completely agree with what you're saying about the narrative of the Cowboys, them coming off that game where they got absolutely embarrassed. And the wild thing is that this game, this Raider Cowboys game, has the highest total on the slate. It's very rare that the game with the highest total on the slate is not the favorite. Like, it's not the one that everybody wants to play. Like last week, it was KC Dallas week, right? That was the high ball week. This is the game to target. This is the game to target. This is the game to target.
And what's the spread too, right? It's isn't Vegas still? 5? It's 7.5 Dallas. So what is that? What does that tell you about Vegas's confidence in the Cowboys offense?
Yeah, the Cowboys are implied at 29 points, where the Raiders are at 22.
And that's higher than Buffalo, isn't it?
Yes, it's higher than Buffalo. Went down. Buffalo opened, I think, at 27. They've went down to 25.5.
Dang.
Dallas has not changed. Right? Yeah. And now the game did drop a little bit because it was a 51-point total, or it was a 55-point total it opened at. It dropped to 51. But this Buffalo-New Orleans game opened at 52 and has dropped to 46.5.
Wow.
That game is not very much further off than what the Lions game is.
And it's a close spread too, right? Like Buffalo's only favored by 4, I think. Yeah. So I mean, the total's dropping and the spread is close. So I mean, that's And
I get it that Josh Allen but this is where I think leverage is going to play a part, because I do think you're going to get a lot more casuals that are going to play on this slate, because people that just want to hang out with their family and whatever. I'm going to throw a couple bucks to Draftkings, but throw a couple bucks to FanDuel, whatever, and they're going to want to play a little bit here. And everyone's going to want to, it's Josh Allen. I'm going to play Josh Allen. Josh Allen's the best quarterback. It's easy. I'm going to play him. And don't get me wrong, Josh Allen has an incredible ceiling. I mean, his rushing upside, he's the only quarterback on the slate that has it with no Justin Fields, because Dak Prescott really just isn't running this year. That's not really a thing for him. And so he's really the only guy that has that. And it's a matchup against New Orleans, and people are just going to want to play Josh Allen, stock him with Stefan Diggs. And I think I do like this game quite a bit, this Raider. And I honestly, the Raiders are another team that can really push the Cowboys, because, and again, the Raiders have kind of went into a little bit of a slump lately. But prior to this, I mean, this was a team that was dropping 30-plus points on really good teams and beating really good teams only about a month ago. Now, a lot of things have happened with this game, with this team over the course of the last month, with the Henry Ruggs stuff, John Gruden stuff, whatever. But I still think that this offense is still good enough to be able to push this game and to make this game where we see 60-plus points scored. Like, it's definitely in the range of possibility. And I don't know if you can say the same for the Saints, like the Saints and Bills game, right? You can see where the Bills get up quickly on the Saints. And I don't know if the Saints are good enough to be able to overcome that with Trevor Siemian and Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith. And, especially without, if they don't have Mark Ingram, they don't have, and they don't have, Alvin Kamara. Like, that game could get really ugly really quickly. Like, it feels like the best game is this Dallas Raider game, right? Yeah. Because there's pieces on both sides you can play. On the Cowboys side or on the Raiders side, obviously Darren Waller is 100% in play. And then, if you want to take a shot at some of the other pieces, like, Brian Edwards, who, I don't know, some games they decide they want to target him, other games they don't. But, he's in play as an option. You have a bunch cheaper guys like Zay Jones, who's a deep threat. But, Derek Carr takes a lot of deep shots this year. He's top 5, top 6 and deep ball attempts this year. He's top 5 or 6 and deep ball completion percentage this year. And so, I don't know. I just really like this second game quite a bit. And I think it's the one that's going to get overlooked. And I think it's a mistake because there is so many question marks surrounding it. You have CeeDee Lamb. Is he going to get rolled in? Is he going to play? Both of these teams have not played very well lately. And you have the Cowboys coming off of one of their worst games of the year, where they just got smacked on national television. And people are just going to be scared off of this game and just rather go to the Bills. And I think that's a mistake. If the ownership is any indication of it, with Josh Allen getting 50+% of the ownership, that's a mistake. Dak and Josh Allen should be right neck and neck with each other in terms of of ownership. And if there's a large discrepancy, we got a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even to the tune of, like let's say CeeDee Lamb's rolled out, who I'm talking about, and of course he's the catalyst of that team. But I'd be willing to even take shots on where you play Dak and Stefan Diggs. You don't play Josh Allen and Stefan Diggs, because a lot of people will have that. And if, let's say we do get a big game from Diggs and he's kind of the only one who's getting work, you do get that 2 touchdowns and 100 yards that you would want from him, but Dak already went out and scored, 35 or whatever, and maybe he runs one in, Josh Allen doesn't run one in. I mean, I love getting leverage plays like that. I'm high on Dak regardless of CeeDee Lamb's in. But again, CeeDee Lamb, the funny thing about Lamb is, like, so much is being made about him not playing, like unlikely to play, and I just don't know where that's coming from. Like, everything's kind of trending in the direction that he will play. Like, everything that he's doing from concussion protocol is making it seem like he will play. But everywhere that you read, and all of the, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of touts and everything that you're reading about the situation is that the dude's unlikely to play. Okay, I mean, that's fine, and I can have that keep going, and then we get him ruled in on Thursday, and people kind of already made their decision on where they want to go, and he's just such a slam dunk play with him in.
While we're on that game, I'm curious, do you guys have thoughts on Josh Jacobs? Because I think he's going to get lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
And we've seen 12 targets to him over the last 2 weeks, and he's playing 65% of the snaps. We talked about, that game, being a high total, and he's obviously got the great touchdown equity for the Raiders. It's just his pass game involvement has been, rather encouraging on a full PPR site. And then you got a half PPR site like FanDuel where touchdowns are weighted heavily. I mean, he's always been their touchdown guy. So I just think for such a high total game, I mean, stacking up the Cowboys, what are you looking at? What are you guys looking at on the Raiders side? I mean, you just take the guaranteed points with Renfro. Do you double stack with Waller? Because, I mean, we've seen Waller have some pretty dud games this year, and I think he's going to come in as the highest on tight end. So, like, you can double stack. I'm assuming if you're playing Dak, you're playing Schultz too, because, tight ends versus the Raiders, and he's going to be probably his favorite target to throw to outside of CeeDee Lamb. But, I mean, can you double stack with Waller? Do you just play Josh Jacobs and he can get you, 75 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground and have 4 catches for 35 yards. And that's 7 and 7 is 14 plus 12 is 26. So, I mean, there are ways that he can get you there. So thoughts on the Raiders side of things while we're on that game?
Josh Jacobs is very interesting, especially on FanDuel. You're looking at a $6,700 price tag on him this week, where he comes in, as the fifth highest price running back, kind of, right underneath Montgomery. If Ingram doesn't play, let's say we don't get Zeke, people will play Pollard, but you can play Josh Jacobs on the other side. I mean, the thing that's frustrating about the Raiders is, like, you need him to kind of get into the red zone. He actually has the second most red zone attempts rushing wise on the slate of running backs. So, like, if they get there, we can think that they're going to try and run the ball with him to score the touchdown. And we know on FanDuel, touchdowns are king. So you could, end up with a 20+ point score on a guy who is going to be, 10% owned, dare I say, even possibly sub, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it's possible that he could be sub 10% owned in some tournaments that you're in, just because of the state of the slate. We could, people already played Montgomery and Swift. Then they might want to play Tony Jones late, or they might want to play Tony Pollard if Zeke's ruled out. Like, he could just be the forgotten son. And you're talking about the receptions, Matty. Yeah, like 3.5 receptions is what he's averaging, over these past couple of games. I think actually on the year for Jacobs, which is not something that we think about with him, and just coming off of that 7-target game. So there is some merit. The offense has looked very bleak with the Ruggs situation. Like, Ruggs being out has just, like, completely killed this offense, because he was such a field stretcher, I guess, and just opened up so many things for them. I think that Renfrow makes a ton of sense, in game stacks. And that's kind of where I'll start. But I'm going to have so much exposure to these Dallas game stacks that I will make, Josh Jacobs and Waller teams, Renfrow and Waller teams, Jacobs and Waller, without Renfrow, who will be the most popular piece on the Raiders, I think.
You think he's more popular than Waller?
Yeah, I guess maybe more so on DK than on FanDuel.
Okay.
Because of what the tight end position means. But I think Schultz, granted, let's say we don't get CeeDee Lamb. I mean, Schultz probably is just a lock button play for a lot of people. But even with that, I think, people will still talk themselves into him. And just, again, if we're talking about Zeke being ruled in, Maddie, it's like, do you want to pay up at running back, or do you want to pay for a tight end who, people talk about being like Kelsey, and the games can be there, but the games more often than not, do not come to fruition there if he's not scoring those touchdowns. So,
and especially we've seen this Dallas defense kind of key on these bigger stud tight ends. I mean, Kelsey didn't have a great game last week.
Right.
I mean, he had a rushing touchdown. And a couple weeks ago when they played Atlanta, I mean, Kyle Pitts is I'd compare him, pretty similar in terms of, usage at the tight end position to Darren Waller. He gets split out wide a bunch and can pretty much run anything in the route tree. And they held Pitts down, and he did absolutely nothing in that game. So while, on paper, tight end does look good for a matchup against Dallas, at the same time, these stud tight ends that are the main pieces of the offense have kind of been getting some extra focus from this Dallas defense as well. So, I think inherently, when you're stacking up against the Raiders, your first thought is to, well, let me include Waller on the other side. And I think Jacobs maybe more so than anybody on the slate, is likely to score 2 touchdowns.
Damn.
So, all right. So we are an hour and 6 minutes into this.
We're just kind of been jumping all over the place.
Well, yeah, I know. We haven't really hit anything, but I feel let's do this really quickly. Who are your top 3 quarterbacks? I know there's only 6, so it's not like we're going out far here. But who are your top 3 quarterbacks you want to play? I know you guys, some of you only play one lineup, but just your top 3 quarterbacks right now.
It would be Dak's my 1. I think Allen's my 2. And yeah, I mean, I don't know after that. I mean, I guess those guys are just leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else for me. I guess maybe Dalton over Carr. But that's kind of tough for a pill for me to swallow. But yeah, Dak is my 1 on the slate.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I'd go Dak 1, Allen 2, and then probably just by default Derek Carr number 3. If you had a gun to my head and I had to pick a cheap guy, it'd probably be Jared Goff.
Oh, get out of here!
As awful as that sounds,
he could be good leverage. I mean,
I won't be playing him, but
all right. So for me, it would be Dak, Josh up, and then Dalton. So let's jump over to running back because we've spent all this time, and I know we've kind of jumped around. So we've talked about all these guys already, so we don't have to go incredibly deep. But there are you have on DraftKings you have Zeke at 8K. Alvin Kamara is likely not going to play. DeAndre Swift at 7,300. Mark Ingram, we're going to have to monitor because he was absent for practice today, which was kind of surprising. Didn't really see that one coming, so we'll see on that. But 6,200. David Montgomery, 6K. Josh Jacobs, 5,900. Tony Pollard, 5,600. Singletary's 4,900. Matt Breida, who's now getting involved in this offense, is 4,800. Zach Moss is 4,700. Kenyon Drake, 4,600. And then from there, you have Tony Jones. I guess that would be the guy you would talk about on the other side of that. And then over on FanDuel, because, we're talking about FanDuel today, 8,400 for Zeke over on FanDuel, 8K for DeAndre Swift, 7,500 for David Montgomery, 6,700 for Josh Jacobs, 6,600 for Ingram, 5,900 for Pollard, 5,800 for Singletary. Moss is 5,700. Drake is 5,600. Breida is 5,300. Jamal Williams, if he plays, 5,200. And then Tony Jones is 4,800 over on FanDuel. The one thing I think you bring up, Matt, you make a really good point with Josh Jacobs, is he is being targeted far more than what we typically see from him. I mean, he's already at 32 targets this year. He only had 45 all of last year, and he's already at 32, and that's with missing games this year. He's only played in 8 games so far this year. He has almost a 12% target share in this offense. And, those are things that kind of we've been waiting for him for the last couple of years. He's been in the league. It's something that they've always sort of talked about, was making him more involved as a pass catcher, but it kind of hadn't happened. But I do think that he's a really interesting option here, especially if he's going to continue to see the sort of targets that he's going to see. Because even outside of the 7 he saw last week against Cincinnati, I mean, the week before he saw 5, 4 the week before that. And so, I mean, he has, 1, 2, 3, 5 games this year with at least 4 targets or more. And I think that he can even be decent leverage off of David Montgomery, who's only $100 more than him on DraftKings, because they're very similar. Both of them, he does. Josh Jacobs does not get the 85% of the touches out of the backfield. He only gets 60% of the opportunities, but his target involvement is so much higher than what David Montgomery has been that he makes for a very similar play in my book, but one that I think could possibly have a higher ceiling than David Montgomery because of his pass catching work on DraftKings. FanDuel is a little bit different, obviously, with only being a half-point PPR side over there, so it takes a little bit of of that out of there. But I think Josh Jacobs is an incredible play, and like you said, I don't think anybody is going to play Josh Jacobs whatsoever. And then we've sort of flirted with talking about this, but I think we should talk about it. Is Tony Pollard at 5,600? There is a range of possibility here where he sees 50% of the opportunities in this backfield coming. In Zeke, it's not even just so much that they're coming off playing late Thursday or late Sunday against the Chiefs, which was in that 3:00 slate. But also, getting back, but he also suffered an injury in that game. And so he did practice in full, so that's a positive. But it's very well in the range of possibility that they really hold the reins back on Zeke. Tony Pollard has proven to be more than effective. And not many people are going to play Tony Pollard at only 5,600. So I do think that he makes some sense here at his price tag. And then I completely agree. I will not have much of Zeke Elliott. I'll have some. It's if you're playing, more than one lineup, it's almost not ridiculous, but I'm not going to kill myself. And if Zeke goes off and have a good game, I'm going to have some exposure, but I'm just going to be well under the field. And I love DeAndre Swift in this matchup. DeAndre Swift has been an absolute monster this year. And at some points, I don't think he gets the credit that he truly deserves either, because he plays 72% of the snaps, 64% of the opportunity, which is top 10 among all running backs, 67 targets this year, which is the most among all running backs. He also has 24 red zone touches. He's first in receptions, second in routes run with a 20% target share, which is ridiculous for a running back to have a 20% target share in this offense. He's also 8th in evaded tackles, 2nd in yards created per touch. So he's been super, super, super efficient as well. And he is in an absolute smash spot, and I will not have a lineup without DeAndre Swift, because I just don't see how he fails.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great. I mean, when you're talking about just equity as far as share goes in the backfield against this team, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, Kev. I'm not gonna be one to talk you off of that play. I mean, if this, again, so many things can go differently with these slates and with these plays. Like, if he's coming off of a 21-point game against Cleveland, who's got a pretty decent front seven there when you're talking about stopping the run, and this Bears defense cannot, they just cannot do it. They can't tackle, they can't cover. I think that, again, this is a situation where I want to monitor what's going on with the other play in the backfield. I haven't even looked. Are we dealing with anything with Jamar Jefferson and Jamal Williams?
Jamal doesn't have any tag.
No tag. Okay, so he came back and he was fine last.
Yeah, he played last week. Yep.
No targets though.
11 yards. Yeah.
No targets last week. So I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be as bold to say that I wouldn't have a lineup without him, but I think he is he's one of those plays, and we saw it last year. He wasn't the same play, but Adrian Peterson, that guy went in it was a price tag thing, but he was whatever 4K or something like that. Scores twice. Like, and you have him in the first game and you are chilling because nobody wanted to play this guy. And Swift is just, he's been so good for so many slates that people have kind of talked themselves out of. And on a short slate, I don't want to do that. So I know I'll have a lot of teams where I have Swift and Montgomery going early just off of the state of what the slate is kind of bringing me and dictating. But I could, you could possibly be looking at 60 points from your two running back positions to start off the slate. And that's always a good feeling. Josh Jacobs is tough. I probably wouldn't play him over Montgomery, but I think, just having a leverage off of him later is nice. And then, Tony Pollard is the ultimate leverage play of the slate. And I know that people will talk themselves into the numbers not being there, but he's been so damn efficient, dude. It's so crazy. Like if he sees, any type of upscale passing work in this matchup, with CeeDee Lamb being healthy, even with Amari Cooper being out, I can still think that we could see him seeing some pass catching work. This would be unbelievable smash spot. And, if we get Zeke ruled out late or we could run into a situation where Zeke is active and they're just like, go out and play 30% of the snaps. Like what happens if Dallas is boat racing the Raiders? Okay, it's Tony Pollard season. Like what happens if Dallas runs into a situation where the Raiders go up early? All right, we don't need to play Zeke. Throw Tony Pollard out there. Like there's so many scenarios that I could talk myself into, which is what keeps my ownership on Zeke low, because I just think Pollard, when you're looking at it, I mean, he's 8,400 on FanDuel, Zeke is, and Tony Pollard is 59. I mean, just with that $2,000 in salary plus, you can do so much with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with you guys at the running back position.
And I just want to say, I don't have a grasp on this at all, but is Mark Ingram more likely to play than Alvin Kamara? Or are they both kind of like in the same boat with their
They're
injuries?
both DNPing.
Right.
So honestly, we've got no clue.
No clue. I mean, Mark Ingram he's dealing with the knee, so it kind of falls into the same boat with me there with Zeke. But again, it's kind of a price tag difference too. So if Mark Ingram's active and Kamara's not, like I'd be much more apt to just play Ingram and take a shot on him at home against Buffalo. What the hell did they just do against Jonathan Taylor, right? Like they just got gashed. I think Edmonds is supposed to be back on their in their linebacking core this week, so that's a good get for them. But I'd be intrigued in playing some Mark Ingram if he were healthy. I just don't know what to make of that situation.
And he also has seen a lot of targets too. I mean, which has kind of helped him out as well, especially without Kamara out. But let's say they're both out because they both logged DMPs both days of Monday and Tuesday so far this week. Yeah. And let's say they both don't play. And I know Tony Jones is only 4K, but are you guys like, is he a must play if he's out? Because
I thought you were going to say Tymo.
Oh, no, he's on. Yeah. That made his finger went the wrong way.
No, he's back this week.
He's back, yeah.
Well, I know though.
And they still have Washington too.
Yeah, but regardless, because I think that he would carry quite a bit of ownership if.
Yeah, and I think that could turn into more of a committee than people maybe anticipate. Because I mean.
That's my problem. I thought that's okay, fair. Good, because I thought we were gonna have I was kind of preparing for an argument because I thought you guys would have said the opposite.
No, because I mean, you think about Ingram. I mean, Ingram's been there, right, for years. Peyton trusts him, and he knows that offense like the back of his hand. And Kamara's obviously gonna get most of the work when he's healthy, but.
True, but I don't know the thing I would say with Tony Jones is Tony Jones is the reason they cut Latavius Murray because of how well
absolutely
and looked and everything, right? And so it's not that I don't think that he can, but I also I get it that I think Buffalo's run defense isn't as good as we think that it was, but I also think it's good enough to shut down Tony Jones. And I also
Tony
will
Jones
say,
is not Derrick Henry, and he's not Jonathan Taylor.
correct.
We'll just say it that way.
Are the Saints getting back their 2 left tackles that they were without last week? Because
We
that's
don't know that. Yeah.
If their left tackles are also out again, like, no thanks.
Yeah,
no fucking thank you. Do I want to mess with that? But I think Tony Jones, if he's the starter, where do you think his ownership would come in? If he ends up being the starter here?
Oh my god.
Well, he'd have to be ruled in early, right? Because that's the late game. So for people for him to become super, super popular,
I think we'll
have to get news tomorrow.
I think we'll know by tomorrow. I have a pretty good idea. We should know
fair.
before.
Yeah, because if both Ingram and Kamara DNP, maybe it's hey, we're going to test it out pregame, and that would. I honestly would rather just them rule them out and Jones just be chalk, and I can be different by not playing him, because I think there's definitely ways that he doesn't get. He's not like there's ways he doesn't get Mark Ingram's workload over the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Like I think it could end up just being a committee, and yes, maybe he heads that committee up, but him himself, he just came off IR with an injury last week, or whatever it was recently. So like I don't know. I just don't see them thrusting him into 20 touches.
Well, and we got the golden boy back, Mr. Taysom contract extension. Hill himself. True. Like, what is his red zone work going to be? That could be the real sweat in playing Tony Jones. I think that
that's also assuming the Saints get to the red zone. With all these injuries, right?
Exactly. No, it's gonna be tough for them. Granted that I forget who the guys are, but I think there's seven of 11 of their offensive starters are dealing with injury. That's a tough look, even with a home matchup here against Buffalo. That's going to be tough for them to run out that offense like that. It's a 4K back who could be thrust into what would be the role, and I definitely think on the morning of Thanksgiving we'll know about Kamara and Ingram's status, or have a good idea going into the slate itself. So yeah, Maddie, we could be looking at definite chalk there at the running back position, which again, there's so many other, like I'm normally, I think from an on paper standpoint, I guess, you could probably talk yourself into it being a slam dunk play, and maybe, point per dollar wise, if you want to have exposure to them, that's great. But I think if there's any way that you can, leverage your lineups to kind of get away from the field, and that's kind of one where I kind of talked about going chalky if the rest of your team hits, like that would be one where if I have, a team that really is, in the fold, in the mix going into that late game, and I have 1 or 2 spots left, and it's, Tony Jones is one of them, I'm going to look for ways to pivot off of him in the chances that I dupe with somebody that possibly has Tony Jones there.
For sure.
Yeah. And then I guess that's still a relative possibility, I think it's very low. With Kamara, if he plays, how would you handle that?
It's an MCL, but the way that he's utilized in this offense and would need to be to keep them in the game against Buffalo, I'd be willing to have some shares of him. I'd play him over Zeke, to be honest.
Oh, I would too, for sure. Just because of his pass catching involvement.
Yeah. I just don't know, man. I just really like Jacobs with the way this slate breaks out. I really like Jacobs at pretty much no ownership. Montgomery obviously is probably the best point per dollar running back on the slate against Detroit, and then Swift. Swift is pretty much Kamara for Detroit as well.
Yeah.
And we know he's going to play, and he's cheaper than Kamara. So I don't know. I just have, as much as I do like Kamara, like I have a hard time putting him in my top 3 running backs this week with all things considered.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think he's going to play. It doesn't sound too positive that he's going to play. And so, I just wanted to hit on that really quickly. I didn't want to just not talk about him at all. So let's jump over to wide receivers. I think we've pretty much beaten the running back horse to the death. So let's go to wide receivers. And again, we've kind of hit on some of these guys already, but you have Stefan Diggs, who's 7,900 on DraftKings, CeeDee Lamb, who's 6,900. He's interesting too because like I've been trying to, while you guys are talking, kind of look around and see if I can find. And there's so many differing reports. There's some people saying that the Cowboys feel like that he has been going through the meetings and everything with them, and that there's positivity coming out of Dallas. But then you also have the other side where people are saying no, there's no chance he's going to play. But the hard part is like they're not really having practices. I mean, they're not out there having like a normal practice, right? And so we don't really know. And so that's gonna be a situation we're just gonna have to monitor. And he's only 69.
But like Ryan said too, it's a concussion, right? It's a black and white line.
For sure. But
it's either he's good to go or he's not.
Because he still has to go through and do all the protocols and be able to hit all the marks for him to get cleared.
Yeah.
And so if he's cleared in, you have no concerns whatsoever. Anyways, so then you have Michael Gallup at 5,900, Darnell Mooney's 5,700, Hunter Renfro's 5,600.
Ridiculous.
Allen Robinson, I don't think he's going to play. He has been DNP both days, right?
Yep.
Even though he's listed at questionable, I don't think he's going to play at 5,100. Marquez Callaway at 5K. Emmanuel Sanders at 4,800. Khalif Raymond 4,600. Cole Beasley, who's also questionable at 4,500. Traquan at 4,400. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4,200. Brian Edwards at 3,900. Marquis Goodwin at 3,800. And Deontay Harris, 3,700. Gabriel Davis, 3,600. Cedric Wilson, 3,500. I guess I'm just going to read the whole fucking list. And then over at FanDuel, 8,300 for Diggs, 7,700 for Lamb. Darnell Mooney, 6,800. Well, that's okay. Michael Gallup at 6,500. Seeing these prices throws me off. 6,200 for Renfro. Traquan Smith is 5,900. Emmanuel Sanders 5,800. Marquez Callaway 5,700. Over on FanDuel.
Yeah.
So as far as the wide receivers are concerned, we already know that Stefan Diggs is going to be absolute chalk. We already know this. And he probably should be because he has the highest upside of any wide receiver on this slate. He's one of the rare 40-plus upside wide receivers that you're going to have on the slate. CD probably could do it, but I don't have as much confidence, even when he's healthy, that he could hit that number like Stefan Diggs can. But past those guys, like I think that there's a lot of like, I think where you're going to win the slate could be in this lower tier of wide receivers and getting this right. Because I think that there are a lot of wide receivers here like Khalif Raymond or Cole Beasley or Traquan Smith or Amon-Ra St. Brown or Brian Edwards. All these guys I think are on some level in play. And like I've already mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. I absolutely love him. Great matchup. And with Jared Goff back, it should help him as well. Chicago's been terrible against wide receivers this year. Led, I think, seventh most fantasy or DK points to the position. He's only 4,200.
Yeah. But
Marquis Goodwin, that's me planting a flag. I absolutely love Marquis Goodwin at $3,800. I'm going to have a ton of Marquis Goodwin this week. He's my favorite value play wide receiver on this slate. Only 3,800. I hate myself because I hate these older wide receivers, but I just think this is a great matchup for him. He is the deep threat in this offense. And I mean, we saw him last week, whatever he, in relief of Allen Robinson. Prior to this game, he was seeing about 2.7 targets per game, but he comes in this game, gets 8 targets against Baltimore, 4 catches, 104 yards and a touchdown. I think he can house call a 60-yard bomb this week, and I just really like taking shots on Marquis Goodwin. He's only 3,800. So he's somebody that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to in this game, especially considering he's going to be likely the number 2 wide receiver in this offense.
Yeah. So Kev, what was your exposure to Valdez Scantling last week?
I actually, you'd be proud. I actually had quite a bit of MBS because he was so cheap.
Okay. Because this is a Valdez Scantling play to me, which is fine. I mean, I you know me, I love some MVS, love to ride that train. It's one of those where I think he makes a ton of sense in game stacks in playing this environment, and he's a scary one-off play for me to have, especially on FanDuel, because you kind of need the touchdowns to kind of break that way. And Cedric Wilson's kind of priced right by him. I see the guys talking in the chat about Traquan Smith, who's only $500 more than him. Granted, the situation that happens there. So he'd be a scary play for me to have as a one-off, considering that most of his equity is done on that deep pass. It can hit. He could hit that long one. But Mooney's share of this team, and that's even before it was Fields.
25% of 25% of targets.
Before Fields, Dalton was targeting him too. Even with A-Rob running out there. I mean, Mooney has been he's been the dude. He's been
the alpha.
So that's kind of where it starts for me with this.
I love Mooney. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in terms of the value pay down guys. Yeah, I absolutely love.
Which is why I agree. Like if you're having Andy Dalton teams, you definitely should be stacking him with a guy like Marquis Goodwin because of the price tag you're getting. You could pay for these guys. You're getting like $11K for 3 guys. 11, 12K for 3 guys. If they pop off for 30 points, the Bears, that is 30 points. These guys can hit in that spot, and you're feeling good.
See, even if you don't. I still don't mind playing him by himself without playing Andy Dalton, because it's kind of like obviously these are like not fair comparisons of the player, but like it's kind of like a Tyreek Hill spot, right? Like I have no problem playing Tyreek Hill on his own, because Tyreek Hill can catch 2 deep balls and have 150 yards or 2 touchdowns, right? But maybe they get up big, right? And Patrick Mahomes doesn't really do much else past that, because how efficient they are. Because especially on these deep passes, if you hit on that, then the rest of it very easily could go to David Montgomery, where Andy Dalton doesn't really do anything. So I have no problem taking shots on guys like this, especially with the deep ball being in the range of possibility. Don't get me wrong, this is not I don't like Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is probably my favorite point per dollar play at wide receiver, like in terms of like just because he's only 5,700 on DraftKings, and he's significantly cheaper than Stefan Diggs, and his upside is definitely real. We just saw it last week with his ridiculous 16 targets that he saw, even only had 5 receptions, but still could have been so much more meat on the bone there in that game. But somebody like Marquis Goodwin, I have no problem playing. I don't think his ownership is going to be all that high. I think people are going to play Cedric Wilson. I think there's some other wide receivers that are going around him right here. And so I just really like Marquis Goodwin in this range of wide receivers.
Yeah. And by playing Marquis Goodwin too, I think, even more so for the game environment aspect, like we could definitely see the Bears be a conservative approach team here on Detroit. Like, we got Andy Dalton in there getting ready to, head into, bye week. Let's just go out and grind out this win. No, don't know what's going on with the coach. Like those shots with Marquis Goodwin last week came because they were forced to put up these points. The crowds in the game, we're booing, we're trying to get up against this Tyler Huntley kid, and they're taking those shots. But what happens if the Bears go out there and like Montgomery gets going and Mooney gets going and they have a consistent lead, they might not need to take those shots, which is why I'd be less apt to kind of take him on because of how I'm playing.
Goodwin, if they can get the running game going, we start working the play action. And I mean, that's where things really open up for the deep ball, is if they're able to get the running game going.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the Bears love to take these deep shots on first down, then run it on second and third, as always. But if those shots don't connect,
love to see it.
It's going to be gross. And the other thing too, Kev, like let's not forget. I mean, Jimmy Graham being into this offense with Andy Dalton back, I hate it. I don't like it. Let Cole Kmet, get some of this run, but they do run this guy in with Andy Dalton when he's out there. And like a lot of the stuff I feel like is just 10 yards or closer. Like it's just, again, if I'm playing Andy Dalton teams, I want to have some exposure to Marquis Goodwin. For my single entry teams and just how I'm playing the slate, he makes for a tough bet for me to get in on those plays, was all I was basically alluding to.
Right. Maddie, what gross wide receivers that make you want to puke are you looking at playing this week? Are you playing any of the Bears or the Bears? Any of the Lions wide receivers? Amon-Ra St. Brown or Khalif Raymond? Josh Reynolds. Are you going to try to get any of these guys? I know again you're a one team guy, so you may not get down here into this group, but
I mean you have to have interest in Josh Reynolds, right? just from a pure peripheral standpoint. I mean, he played 90% of the snaps last week in his first game with Detroit, and like you guys mentioned, he's got that connection with Jared Goff from being on the Rams together. So I mean, min price, you have to have interest, at least somewhat. But I mean, other than that, I mean, probably Cedric Wilson is the lowest I'll go at 3,500 on DraftKings. Yeah. I mean, he's pretty much the wide receiver 2 if Lamb doesn't play, and the wide receiver 3 if he does. I will say I would limit myself to only playing Wilson with Dak, because the odds that Wilson gets there as probably the 3rd or 4th option in the offense and hits his ceiling is if Dak is hitting his ceiling. I don't think Wilson's not going to be like an MVS or Marquis Goodwin type of play where, he can hit on one long play early, but I just think the odds that Wilson gets there are significantly boosted in a game that Dak throws for, 350 yards and 4 scores, as opposed to, Dak only throwing, if they win by 28 points or whatever we've seen them win by, and Dak only throws 28 times, then I think you're only looking at, maybe 3 or 4 targets for Cedric Wilson, and, then his floor comes into play. So I would say him with Dak. I would say Reynolds is interesting as a one-off just because of his price and his pure amount of snaps on the field. Yeah. I mean, outside of that, man, it's pretty gross at wide receiver down in the cheap range. I mean,
no Deshaun Jackson?
No, I can't do it because they still involve Zay Jones deep, who's another mid-price guy.
Right, you have him. I will say with Deshaun Jackson, I mean, it's only his 2nd week, and it's supposed to be his 3rd game with the Raiders. He did go from 17% snap share to 34% snap share last week. He only ran 8 routes, but I don't know. I would not be shocked if he hauled in a 60-yard touchdown, but I think it's a thin play. It's not one that I would have like a lot, maybe a 5% play, depending on how many lineups you're building. I don't mind him at this price, like we already talked about with Derek Carr and, his willingness to throw downfield this year. Yeah. So I don't mind him as a play. And Cole Beasley, I think, is going to play, but he was limited participant with the ribs injury. I've been playing Gabriel Davis. I played him 2 straight weeks. I continue to play him. He's super cheap too. He's only 3,600.
Yeah,
he's right there.
My issue with Davis and why I didn't mention him is because Knox is back, and they tended to run an insane amount of 11 personnel while Knox was healthy. And with Cole Beasley now being back to healthy, he ran, I think, 30 routes on Allen's dropbacks last week. And for reference, I think Diggs ran 36. So that just tells you that Beasley was starting to run, whereas 2 weeks ago, he only ran 8 routes. So Beasley, finally got back to his full role with that rib issue. And my concern with Davis is he's going to go back to, being just a part-time guy with Knox being back. I think Knox being out was the biggest boost to Gabe Davis in terms of playing time. But I mean, you can throw Davis in the same bucket you talk about Deshaun Jackson in, right? A deep threat speed guy that can, he can hit a long touchdown.
Yeah.
Or a short touchdown if they get in the red zone and he's getting equity there. I mean, this Buffalo team will pass and pass and pass regardless of it being neutral game script or they're up or they're down.
And we've seen wide receivers for Buffalo take end rounds too. Like Isaiah McKenzie, we've seen him do it, So yeah, I think all these guys are very similar. I think Reynolds would probably be the one guy that's, got somewhat safe volume. And that's solely because he's going to be on the field for pretty close to 100% of the snaps. It's the volume there. I mean, that game could be really slow with minimal pass attempts too. And so you're looking, he could see 4 targets himself and he's not really a deep threat. He's more of a possession receiver. So at that point, I'd rather just kind of take these other guys and maybe Reynolds does pick up steam because, a lot of people would like to talk about snap share and things like that. So if he were to be chalk, that's something I would be 100% off of.
Well, for sure, I could go so many different directions.
Yeah,
I mean, even Jared Goff this year has been weird. I mean, he is not like with these pass catchers. He has not even been reliable in terms of on a week to week basis targeting. Like 1 week it's Khalif Raymond, the next week it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, the next week it was Quintez Cephas before he went on IR. Like he spreads the ball around so much that I don't think that. I mean, at 3K obviously, and if he's going to be low owned, then yeah, I think he's definitely an option. But if he somehow got to be somewhat chalky, then yeah, you're right. Like you could definitely jump off that train too. So
there's one guy that I'm probably not going to play him myself, but I'm just curious. I just looking through all these injuries and whatnot. The gears start turning and how offenses may change their approach or whatnot. If Ingram and Kamara are out, Deontay Harris is rather cheap. I mean. Could he just fall into that short check down role guy that, the running backs have been taking on? I mean, or is it, do you think the running backs by committee like Montgomery and Tony Jones and those guys would take over? Or do you think we could see a spike in, it would obviously be short passes, but could we see a spike in Deontay Harris targets and with his occasional deep target?
I would, yes, I definitely think that would be something they could do. Kind of utilize the short passing game as an extension of the run. Yeah, I think that would definitely be in play for Deontay Harris. I mean, that's kind of been his thing this year. They haven't utilized him as much as a deep threat. So yeah, I definitely think you could see a lot more opportunities for him, in the short passing game, just trying to get the ball out of their hands there on that one. So yeah, he's only 3,700 too, and I mean he could realistically see 8-9 targets in this game.
Right. Yeah, he's 5,200 on FanDuel. I mean, he's kind of he's a nice leverage play from that game when you're talking about, especially if we get like you were saying, Maddie, Tony Jones, like chalk week. I mean, if you play Deontay Harris, I'm looking at Tony Jones is 4,800. So like if you find 400 just to get up to Deontay Harris, and you're looking at his games with Trevor Siemian, I hadn't even looked at these, but the targets have been there. That's an interesting leverage play. I like that. And with Traquan too. I think Traquan's catching steam already. I see people talking about him in the chat. So again, if he's going to even lose ownership to another guy in the receiving core on his own team, it's awesome play.
Yeah, and on the Buffalo side, I will say really quickly, I am not worried whatsoever about Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore has been ass this year. I mean, he's been one of the worst corners in the league so far this year. Obviously, it can change at any time, but I mean, so far, he has already allowed 604 yards receiving, 17.3 yards per completion, and 106.2 passer rating on the year. He has been awful so far this year. I mean, and for reference, all of last year, he only allowed 626 receiving yards, and the year before that was 612. So after this game, he is going to pass this, and he is going to absolutely obliterate where he stands right now in terms of receiving yards allowed. He has been, like I said, just terrible this year. He's already allowed 4 touchdowns, 106.2 passer rating. So I don't care what Buffalo Bills wide receiver he's going to see because I want him to see them. Please put Stefan Diggs on Marshawn Lattimore all game so he can just take him to church. Because he's been awful.
Yeah, that's interesting there. Those numbers are atrocious. So I like Manny Sanders this week.
I think he's going to be the forgotten guy. I think he hasn't done anything in a while.
Right.
Well, neither has Beasley.
Well, Beasley, but Beasley's numbers have dropped, which doesn't surprise me once Knox came back. And his numbers really spiked with Knox out, and then with Knox out, with Knox back, he has not been great. But Manny Sanders really hasn't been great in a little bit of time here, and he is in that awkward range of price where he's 4,800, And there's wide receivers like, even Hunter Renfrow is not that far away from him, but he's kind of the lower tier of probably of these guys like Khalif Raymond or Cole Beasley or Traquan Smith. All of these guys, he's kind of right in that range. I don't mind playing. I mean, I think he's even I think getting leverage would be fading Stefan Diggs and playing Emmanuel Sanders because of how ridiculous the ownership is going to come in for Stefan Diggs.
Yep.
Like, Maddie, what is Stefan Diggs' projected ownership right now? Have you seen that?
Yeah, he's second. He's currently second behind Gallup, which is funny to me because Gallup is like 6K and is coming in as the highest priced or highest owned wide receiver. I'm seeing now. So this has CeeDee Lamb at 18%. So, I mean, they are factoring in the fact that Lamb is playing. And this goes back to everybody's just going to play Diggs.
Right.
And is, I guess, not going to play Lamb. But this has Gallup over 50%, and it's got Diggs right there at 50% as well.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
and then Sanders is 17 and Beasley 17. So it's as of right now, it's Sanders and Beasley are going to be the overlooked guys.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to go back to week 5, really, that he's had a meaningful game. I guess maybe even week 6 where he had 14, but past that he had 0, 10.5, 7.1, 5.6. But it all kind of coincides as well with just how bad the Bills' offense has been lately.
But what's interesting with that is the week 6 is when Knox got hurt. That's the last game Knox played. So, it's like the Bills' offense hasn't done shit since Knox had been out. And so, Beasley did have – he's got a 15, a 21, and a 24 or something in weeks 1 through 6 with Knox in. And, I mean, same with Emmanuel Sanders. He's got a 26, a 13, a 20, and a 14. So when they had Knox in there, I guess just because of the efficiency that opens up across the middle of the field, it seemed to help the rest of the team. So maybe that's, maybe that's something – that people aren't catching up on because Knox just came back. Has he had 1 or 2 games back?
Second
third game back.
Right? Oh, third.
I think this should be his 3rd game back.
I think you're right. Yeah, he played week 10. He only saw 1 target, but he saw 10 targets last week.
Yeah, I mean, the air yards have been there still, though, for Manny Sanders. That hasn't really been the problem. I mean, outside of last week, he only had 38, but week 10, he had 78. Week 9, he had 107, 108 against Miami, 178 against Tennessee. The air yards have been there. That really hasn't been the problem. They just really haven't been connecting. He also has 17 deep targets on the air, which is 8th, and his average target distance is 17.4, second among all wide receivers. So there's a lot to like with Emmanuel Sanders here in this. And if, like I said, if you want to get a little bit different, I don't mind going like Emmanuel Sanders and Dawson Knox versus not taking Stefan Diggs to get a little bit different.
And Sanders is game script proof, right? I mean, he can get there on his 6 to 8 targets, whether they're up by 40 or whether it's a shootout, because of the nature of his deep targets. I mean, he's seeing 100 air yards a game on his minimal 5 point whatever targets he's getting. So I mean, it doesn't matter what Buffalo does when you play Emmanuel Sanders. You need a shootout pretty much for Beasley to get there. The only game he didn't get there, or the only game that it wasn't really a shootout, was the Washington game where they won by 25. And Beasley saw a ridiculous 13 targets for whatever reason that game.
Okay.
But I mean, every other game that Beasley's got there, either Buffalo lost or it was a high scoring back and forth fair. So yeah, I like the Sanders call. I've been playing Emmanuel Sanders for the last handful of weeks myself, and it hasn't worked out. But I mean, this Bills offense is one of the best in the NFL. And
I'm surprised you guys haven't brought up the revenge game narrative.
I was just gonna say, you got to talk about the revenge game. No stranger to New Orleans, baby, in the dome. Thank you, Kev. Yep.
It's just a matter of time,
merit, man. And again, I mean, with these two games going late, I mean, we can talk about revenge and all these other narratives and things of that nature, but the fact of the matter remains is that Dallas needs a win at home. And Buffalo desperately needs a win here on the road against the Saints. I mean, they need to pull out all the stops that they can to get this win. So, like, you know, from a DFS standpoint and how I, you know, my process or whatever, it's just let me just find the teams who are good and, you know, need to go out there and you know, do something. You know, because I don't need to necessarily go in with these question marks necessarily with Chicago and Detroit. Like when I have so much equity that can be had in these other two games where people don't want to play them. And we know that, you know, people are going to jam in Diggs. So like we're getting Zeke and Diggs, we're getting Lamb and Diggs. Like, and if you don't want to play Sanders, I mean, come on now. Like he's shown us before that he has, you know, huge upside in these games. In those games where Sanders is hitting, like that's not Diggs hitting as well too. That's at the expense of Diggs. So you have the ultimate leverage spot right there. If he's scoring twice, like that's just going to be huge leverage off of Diggs lineups.
I agree. Do you have any other wide receivers you want to talk about? Or you want to jump over to tight ends?
I'm good. I think we can go to tight ends.
So at tight ends, we have Darren Waller at 6,400, Dalton Schultz at 53, TJ Hockenson at 5,200, Dawson Knox, we just talked about, only 4,400. Sad to see Adam Troutman go on IR. He finally takes off, and then he goes on IR. Cole Kmet at 3,700, Frank Moreau at 2,900. Then, like I said, the rest of them, you know, maybe Juwan Johnson at 2,600. I guess you could talk about him because he may end up being the, you know, next man up there for New Orleans. But at tight end, like, are we just playing Darren Waller or Dalton Schultz and logging out, or Dawson Knox, I guess, would be the other guy that'd be involved in that?
Yeah, Dawson Knox, at least on FanDuel for me, like I'd only want to play him in game stacks. To be honest, I mean, I know the 10 targets are going to keep him there, but he's 5,900 and Dalton Schultz is 6,000. Like I'm just going to play Dalton Schultz more often than not if their prices are the same. Right there in that range to just generate coming in. And again, Zach is going to be kind of where I started the quarterback position. So Maddie always talks about it. I've kind of come on at the beginning of this year, late last year, like just play your stack with the quarterback, with the tight end position. I mean, so much has been made this year. I've seen a lot of people in the industry like TJ Hernandez, who's a friend of the pod and things of that nature, just talking about these milli stacks where guys are taking the tight end with the quarterback. And so I'm much rather apt to go there. I do think that if TJ Hawkinson is going to go overlooked, like I'm going to have to look hard at this guy because we do get Jared Goff back now after it's been the Boyle show. And he had, you know, kind of had some up and down games there, but did start out the season strong and had 8 targets in this first game against the Bears. Didn't really get there. Neither did Swift. But, you know, in an environment, if we can, you know, the way that people are going to guess on a Detroit wide receiver potentially, and I'm fine with taking TJ Hawkinson there. Like he has the ability to match what Waller puts up and outscore Schultz on a slate like this when you're talking about 3 games. And I'm just curious to see what his ownership will be, knowing that he is going to go in that first game there. I have to imagine it's going to be lower than the other 2, but still kind of high. So again, I'm playing Montgomery pretty much everywhere. So that does give me a mini kind of stack that I can talk myself into again, without having to guess on the pass catcher. Waller chalk is one that I just always avoid. And on the 3-game slate, I know that can kind of be, it kind of feels like maybe bad process and I will have some exposure to him, but people just treat him. I talked about this at the beginning. Like they treat him like Kelsey, and it just is not the same to me. I mean, in the range of outcomes, I guess you could probably talk me into where it could be there, but those explosive games just happen so less often than the field is going to give it credit for. And you're looking at his price tag, like again on FanDuel, he's 7,300. Like Hawkinson is 6'1", that's $1,200. Schultz is 6,000. I mean, even Dawson Knox at 5'9". I'm not necessarily apt to play him so low, you know, without Josh Allen. But if I find a way, you know, to kind of get exposure, I mean, Waller is just so scary to have at the highest owned percent for me. And I know it is a 3-game slate, and I'm not necessarily I'm not going to try and talk anybody else off of not playing him, but he's one of those plays like where you look back on it and I'm like, damn, what did I just spend my salary on, for him? Because if he goes out and just gets, 10, 12, 13, like that could potentially just not be enough on the slate. Granted, where things are coming in at with salary, like you're just not going to be happy with that. You're playing him, and like we just had Kelsey at this similar price tag on FanDuel, which was absolutely egregious. I think he was 7,500. Like that dude has legit 30-point upside every time he steps on the field because of the target share that he's seeing. And Derek Carr, he's apt to throw it. Hey, I got Zay Jones, I got Hunter Renfrow, I got Brian Edwards, I got Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs out of the backfield. Like I'm just taking what the defense gives me. I'm not forcing it to anybody. And this Dallas defense, you talked about it, Maddie, just being as stout as they were, as much as they tried to contain Kelsey, and to an extent, they kind of did, and just were saying, we can take this piece, contain him somewhat. I mean, they did a pretty decent job, all things considered, last week. The offense just couldn't get anything going. So again, you have one focal point here for the Dallas team at home. Hey, we just got to stop Darren Waller for going crazy on us and keep everything in front of us. And Hunter Renfrow, he might get there on catches and we can allow some stuff to Josh Jacobs over, underneath. But I think they're just going to commit to not letting Waller get loose. And that's what makes me want to avoid him even on a 3-game slate because of the ownership. I think that's, you got to make stands to a certain extent on 3-game slates. And I think my stands as they start right now are, playing the Dallas passing attack as well as the Dallas defense, which we'll talk about, fading Zeke because I'm playing the Dallas passing attack, and then fading the ultimate run back option on that team, which is Darren Waller from the other side, and just figuring everything else out from the slate.
Yeah, I tend to agree for this slate. I think the chalky build from that Dallas Vegas game is going to be Zeke on one side and Waller on the other. Right. And so you can be completely different by leveraging that game and not playing the running back for the Raiders and Jacobs, and then playing the passing attack on Dallas. And you're flipping the script on the chalk build for that game. So yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm not going to end up with Waller despite loving that game the most, which is kind of weird, but we've got 3 other tight ends. And I'm not going to get cute and play any of these guys like Cole Kmet or anything like that. It's just these 4 tight ends at the top are just way too involved in their offenses that it doesn't make sense to play a guy that's going to see, 4 targets or, right. Kmet gets 7 targets and only catches 2 of them because, that offense just isn't very good. So, I'm not going to overthink tight end this week. It's the top 4 guys for me: Waller, Hawkinson, Schultz, and Knox, and I'm going to play one of them, and most likely Schultz to pair with Dak. And like you said, Ryan, it's just, just don't overthink it. Pair your tight end with your QB, because I mean, a lot of the times, where does the touchdown equity come from? It comes from the tight end position when they get down and close, right? You got play actions and out of jumbo formations and mismatches with a linebacker and things like that, and that's a big reason why the tight ends always do well when the quarterbacks do well throwing touchdowns, is because the tight ends are so involved down in the red zone. So I probably will just end up playing Schultz. I don't hate on 3-game slates. I don't hate double tight end, especially when you've got guys like Hawkinson that can go for 25 as a extended wide receiver. So, I don't hate it. And Hawkinson's interesting too. If you think, the Bears get out early with Monty, maybe Monty has one of those traditional 60-yard opening drives and scores a touchdown. And all of a sudden, Monty's got you 12 points on the opening drive, and the Bears have a 7-0 lead, and Detroit's got to throw out of the gate. And Hawkinson, he's going to be Goff's favorite target. So, that mini stack is definitely interesting. So, again, long-winded way to say I'm not going to overthink tight end. I'm just going to play one of the top 4 guys.
Love that. I think Hawkinson, if he catches a touchdown in that first game, it feels gross to say, but you're kind of sweating. Like I would be kind of sweating.
Yeah, because he's got a 100-yard upside.
Yeah, if he starts popping off, like that's gonna feel like it hurts if you didn't play him. So I think that's kind of just where I gotta figure out where I'm getting my exposure to, because I do want to play Schultz, Maddie, with Dax. So I might have to look at some 2 tight end builds there, where I can have Hockenson
especially on FanDuel, where touchdowns are weighted heavier. The 2 tight end build I think is more logical on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a guy like, Dawson. I mean, Dawson Knox to a certain extent, but like some of these, like Cole Kmet, you know what I'm saying? Where like, Cole Kmet goes out there, this kid 50 and a touchdown, you're like, all right, shake his hand, Cole Kmet, that's great. But like if Hockenson goes out there, he catches 1, dare I say 2 touchdowns, you know what I'm saying? Like you are kicking yourself, because that is a total play that just absolutely makes sense. I mean, involved as a receiver, in line, out wide, he can line up as well. Secondary can't stop anything. Where is Jared Goff going with the ball? I mean, that's one where you're just like, you look at the back end of the slate and you're like, how did I not have more of TJ Hockenson than I did? He gets
8 to 11 targets most games at the tight end position.
Right.
And he's going to go overlooked. Like the ownership, it's Waller and Schultz up top, and then Hockenson checks in third.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, and he's a guy that hasn't really done a whole lot. Really, you have to go way back to like week 2. I mean, for him to have a big game. So,
and even his non-big games have been 11, 19, 11, 15 over the last 5 weeks. So, like, his mediocre games have been enough that he's not going to kill you on a 3-game slate, too. But he's got that. We've seen that 24-point upside.
Yeah, and I agree, too. Kind of what you guys are saying, too, about Waller is I feel like Waller is either, if you play him, he's either going to be, he's going to pay off because he's going to go off, or because if he could be the highest scoring tight end on the slate and still not be worth the price, and not be in the optimal. Because if he scores, let's say 14, he's the highest price tight end, but you have Dawson Knox who scores 10 or 12. Well, obviously that big enough price difference is just so huge that he's not in the optimal and he's not worth the price. So Darren Waller has to smash for him to pay off at that price, that above 6K price tag that Darren Waller carries. So, we say all this, and Wally will talk about the chat, and exactly what I was going to say is watch Juwan Johnson go out and catch 2 touchdowns.
That ain't going to happen again. Yeah. three targets, 2 touchdowns in week 1. Yeah, get out of here.
Well, I mean, Adam Troutman's gone, so I mean, it opens things up a little bit more. And
he was gone in week 1, wasn't he? Or did he play week 1?
Yeah, he played. But regardless, but yeah, I think I would agree. I think we're all kind of in agreement here. Just kind of play the top 4 guys, mix them in, and so let's jump over to defense as we cross past the 2-hour mark, like typical DFS DJ Nation.
Yes, sir.
So, we only have obviously 6 options here. You have the Cowboys at 3,300, the Bills at 31, the Bears at 3K, the Saints at 2,900, the Lions at 2K, and the Raiders at 2,400 along with the Lions. And you jump over to FanDuel and you have the Bears at 5K, the Bills at 4,500, the Cowboys at 4K, the Saints at 3,800, the Lions at 37, and the Raiders at 35. I'm just think I'm going to play the Lions at 2,400. We've talked about them in the past as an option that you could use. They do a pretty good job at getting to the quarterback. Their adjusted sack rate is pretty nice as well. And if you could force Andy Dalton to make a bad decision and throw an interception, like I don't mind going with with this option here with Detroit at 2,400 on DraftKings.
Yeah, that's fair. I just will play Dallas, I think. As much as we talked about that game environment and how much I like it, I am willing to just say that, I'm not playing Waller. I'll probably have little of Josh Jacobs and or Hunter Renfrow. They're pieces that could go off. Like, I'm just going to say they make life miserable for Derek Carr, who they haven't been able to get anything going with Ruggs. The Dallas defense is egregiously mispriced on FanDuel of where they're coming in at. I mean, I'll just play them every time and just log out. There's such an opportunistic defense, which feels weird to say after so many slates of having Dallas over the years on the DJ Nation pod, as Maddie could probably attest to as well too. But they are an explosive defense, getting to the quarterback, making life miserable, secondary making plays. I'm going to bet on them to take a touchdown to the house and just log out with them.
Yeah, on FanDuel, looks like Dallas is only 300 more than the Lions.
Right.
And they're less than the Bears and the Bills. So I think that makes a ton of sense.
The Bears are the top defensive play on the slate on FanDuel at 5K. No thank you.
I actually like the Bears on DraftKings, where they're 3K and only 600 more than the Lions and Raiders, who are men price for this slate at 2,400. The Bears quietly rank second in adjusted sack rate.
They've been getting a ton.
They get a lot of sacks. And they've got 10 in the last 2 weeks. And so, whether it's Goff or Tim Boyle, I mean, if it's Tim Boyle, the Bears are going to be pretty much 40% owned, right?
Right.
And I'm just really not going to care.
I think they named the starter of Goff already.
Is it Goff?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe that lowers the ownership on the Bears, and
definitely.
We know how many mistakes Goff can make, and this game, it is in the Dome in Detroit, but I still like the pressure the Bears have been getting on the quarterback has been a very encouraging sign for how turnover prone Jared Goff can be. So if I need the 600, I will play the Lions on the other side, just because I may end up with a build that's both Swift and Montgomery together as a mini. And if that's the case, it doesn't really matter which defense you play for correlation.
Right.
I think my defense is going to come from that game.
Okay.
Which is going to be chalky, but that's fine because the rest of my build is not going to be chalky for all the reasons we've talked about for the last 2 hours and 6 minutes and 24 seconds.
Right.
All right. Well, we have come to the time where we build a lineup, but I think for the first time ever, we should build a DraftKings and a FanDuel lineup.
Let's do it.
Which would be the first time we've ever done this. It's always been DraftKings, but since we are in the spirit of inclusion, and including FanDuel on this slate, let's build both. So let's start with the FanDuel lineup, which is going to be different for me because I am not a big FanDuel player. But let's do it. Let's build this lineup.
Oh yeah.
So Ryan, you are Team FanDuel. And be sure, by the way, to go check out Ryan's work over at FanDuel, where he's just crushing it. Everybody's just following along as he's just hammering it every single week.
You know how we do.
It's been weird. Like I've actually like news stories for Kansas City has popped up, and I'll click on it, and all of a sudden they have the ads, and it's a video with Ryan. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm trying to look at the news, and I got Ryan's FanDuel videos popping up. So kudos to you. But kick us off.
Appreciate it
with this lineup.
Let's go David Montgomery, 7,500. Early game exposure.
All right, Maddie.
Dak.
So it's back to you, Ryan.
Oh, shit. What did you say? I missed it.
I said let's lock in Darnell Mooney. 68.
Oh, damn.
I didn't hear that either.
Oh, okay. Did you mute, Kev?
Maybe I did on accident.
Okay.
So yeah, I've darted
I
on
was tripping.
6,800. So we have
Damn.
Dak Prescott,
Okay, here we go.
David Montgomery, and Darnell Mooney.
All right, let's get weird here, boys. Let's go TJ Hawkinson at tight end.
My run back for the Dak stack will be Josh Jacobs.
Man, I wish we knew if CD was going to play or not.
Let's assume he's in.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'm going to lock in CD Lamb. So that leaves 5,667 remaining for a wide receiver, a flex, and a defense.
All right, let's see what we got here. Can we? Oh. You know what? This is FanDuel. We're looking for touchdowns, Maddie. I'm going to move your Jacobs play to the flex, and let's play Swift at 8K as well.
All right. This got tight rather quickly.
Mm-hmm. What defense are we wanting to play? And let's pivot from there.
Let's just do, I guess we can't do Marquis Goodwin. We've already got Mooney and Montgomery. I'm not playing 3 Bears. Let's just start with Deontay Harrison at 5,200, which leaves the bottom 3 defenses. Saints, Lions, Raiders. So I guess Lions. I mean, we have no Bills on this team, so I guess Saints would be correlated with the build. Well, because we've got 2 Bears and 2 Lions, so we're kind of game stacking Chicago, Detroit. So I'm not sure Lions D would make a ton of sense.
Yep, no, that's fair.
Yeah, I would just say the Saints,
that could be nice
since we have no Buffalo.
That's nice leverage on what the field will be doing.
Kevin's muted again.
What are you doing, Kev?
So on this one, we got Dak Prescott, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, Darnell Mooney, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Harris, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Jacobs in the flex, and the Saints defense with $0 remaining over on FanDuel. So let's jump over to the old DraftKings. Maddie, you start this one off.
Dak.
Okay.
Maddie's all in on the Cowboys this weekend. They owe him.
They do owe you.
The Cowboys owe me a lot of money this week.
They do owe you.
That would be a great Thanksgiving gift.
So on this one, I'm going to lock in the Manny Sanders at 4,800.
Love it.
Ooh, he's so cheap.
Throw in Monty at 55 too. Too cheap. Or whatever he is over there.
6K.
Still too cheap.
I'm doing the same run back, Josh Jacobs. I'm just gonna flag plant. Jacobs scoring multiple touchdowns and Dallas production is through the air.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with TJ Hawkinson at tight end.
Ooh, okay. So what do we got right now, Kev?
We have Prescott, David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Manny Sanders, and TJ Hawkinson with 5,300 remaining for 2 wide receivers, a flex, and a defense.
5,300. Okay. What's CD?
He's 69. We can play him.
Let's put him in.
All right. Maddie, wide receiver, flex, defense, 4,700 remaining.
Let's double stack Dak with Cedric Wilson.
Ooh, I thought you were going to say Schultz.
Hold on. Yeah, I actually do like the double tight end idea. Let me see. Does that give us?
I'm fine with Wilson too because of the set. I just thought.
Well, let me put it this way. So
go.
with what we have left, if we played the Bears at 3K, which makes sense with David Montgomery.
So if you play Wilson,
leave $7,800 with Wilson. That would leave $7,800, which you could pretty much at that point play whatever you wanted outside of Diggs and Zeke. But
so you can go if you go Wilson. You can go Diggs and Lions. And if you go, if you don't want to go Lions, you want to go Bears, you can play Swift.
Or,
but
if we didn't play Wilson,
you'd be playing Schultz because I think you need 2, which would then leave you with 4,500 per. And so then you're looking at Gallup would be the highest price. So Gallup or Renfro plus Schultz is your 2v2. So pretty much,
I don't mind Renfro, but that's on
Renfro and Schultz versus Diggs and Wilson or Swift and Wilson is pretty much what you're looking at.
The tough thing is talking yourself into Diggs and Manny both getting there,
right,
and not having Allen.
But you can play Swift, but we also have Hawkinson on this team,
right?
I honestly like the Schultz and Renfro.
Renfro is just beautiful exposure. I mean, I guess we would have the ultimate stack there too, right? Because we have Jacobs. So Renfro leverage off of Waller.
Yep. See it, Walito. This is what happens on a weekly basis when I'm trying to build my own teams. Is I get stuck in a freaking 2v2 because I only get to build one or 2 teams a week, and it's these. I mean, these decisions are tough, right? Because you've got on one, like it's 2 completely different builds and between Schultz and Renfro. That's 2 kind of lower ceiling guys, but on a 3-game slate they've got higher floors. And then you got Cedric Wilson, who if CeeDee Lamb plays, which we have him in our build, I mean Wilson legit could only get maybe 4 or 5 targets, but then you're able to jam in a stud with Swift or Diggs on the other side of that 2v2. So I mean it's a lot of give and take that can be frustrating,
especially on the small slate. I mean this is a difference maker.
It's the margin of error is so small on a small slate.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. So this one's Dak, Montgomery, Jacobs, Manny, CeeDee, Renfro, Hawkinson, Schultz, and Bears with $400 left over.
Love it.
I like it.
So, I mean, obviously we'd have to make some serious changes here. If CeeDee's out, that would change the way we do this. But But as of right now, we're going to lock this in. We'll see what happens with CD. So we got a FanDuel lineup for the first time ever on the DFS DJ Nation with the FanDuel lineup build. And then we also have the DraftKings lineup build as well. Be sure to jump over to our free Discord. And, if we have any changes we need to make, I'm sure we'll be talking about some different stuff in there as well. Also, I do want to mention, I should have mentioned this at the top for the people that are still sticking around after a 2-hour and 20-minute pod, is this week we will not be doing a main slate show. We could not make it work for our schedule. We tried to, me and Maddie, tried to figure it out if we could make it work. But, Thanksgiving, family, and all that stuff, a lot of people also, do stuff other than just Thanksgiving Day and everything else. So we tried to make it work. We could not. But what we're going to do is, if you're in our Discord, we are going to put out our plays for the week over on our Discord channel this weekend, and we'll put those out there. And then we'll be back on our normal time for the rest of the year on Thursdays. But this 1 week, we just couldn't make it work for the time, but we did want to get this in. So, we gave you almost 2.5 hours of a pod here on this one to make up for it. Because, we were doing really good with keeping them under an hour and 15 minutes. But, so is life. But like I said, be sure to jump into our Discord. It's absolutely free. I will put a link to it in the show notes, or you can go over to our YouTube channel, and it's in every single one of the videos. Just click the description. It's right in there. It's absolutely free. It costs you nothing. And again, whether you play DraftKings, whether you play DraftKings, whether you play Redraft, DFS, Dynasty, it does not really matter. There is something for everybody over there, and it is always going on. Whether there's always people in there chatting. It has been awesome for us to build this year for our community. That's what we really wanted to do. We tried it with Slack. It was okay, but it didn't really work out the way we wanted to. But with Discord, it's been amazing, and everybody in there has been truly helpful. And it's a really good community in there. And like I said, it doesn't really matter what brand of fantasy football you play. There is something in there for you. And so, again, we will be putting all of our plays for this week over on our Discord for everybody. So we just weren't able to get the main slate out this week. Regardless, it'll be okay. We'll be back next week on our normal time on Thursday nights to bring you the goodness. This season's already flown by. We're at Thanksgiving. We only have like 6-7 weeks left of the regular season, and we're on to playoff football, which is also something I absolutely love for DFS. And hopefully we can get Ryan back for the playoff DFS shows as well, because that will be good times as always. I love those shows too. So Ryan, I truly appreciate you coming on and keeping the tradition alive. I tried honestly whatever I could to get Derek. I worked on him all day to try to get him to come join us. I gave him a guilt trip. I gave everything I could, but he's a busy guy and had a lot of stuff he needed to take care of for the people that he does content for over at FTN. So I could not get him on, but maybe we'll get him on for the playoffs, something like that, if we can make that work. But anyways, Ryan, I really appreciate you joining us. As always.
Pleasure to be here as always, man. It was fun chopping it up. It wouldn't be a pod of Thanksgiving without us almost hitting the 2:30 mark for 3 games, which breaks down to whatever that is, 45 minutes per game. You gotta love that. But yeah, man, we love getting after it here on the DJ Nation pod for the Thanksgiving slate. Love everybody in the chat. I'm in the Discord. Kevin, Maddie got me in, so I'll be in the Discord as well too, chatting it up with you guys. We didn't talk about the meals, but I'm looking forward to getting after some stuffing and mac and cheese.
We can't get out of here without that.
Hopefully, yeah.
That's why we got you. That's why you were the GOAT host. Okay, you kept everything in line. So yeah, really quickly, what are your go-to sides? What are you looking forward to? What's on your plate? What's on your ideal plate for Thanksgiving this Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, definitely got to go with. I mean, I'm a stuffing truther.
Yes,
love it. People talk about it. They get a sour taste in their mouth. They say, oh, it's only one time of the meal or whatever. That's what I love about stuffing, is like you get it on Thanksgiving. It just makes it feel like Thanksgiving. You get it out of the bird. You don't get it separate. Love that. I'll have some cranberry sauce on the side, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes. Wife's family does green bean casserole, absolute favorite of mine. The sides are just the absolute goat. And you gotta have. I see the turkey there on the graphics. I love some turkey. But you gotta have some ham too as well.
I'm a ham guy.
I know people think of it for just Christmas, but
No.
I love having both. I love having a turkey and ham option for Thanksgiving as well.
Yeah, we have ham and turkey, but I'm a ham guy myself. And then part of the family does brisket for Christmas. So
okay.
we've got a couple different meats at the different holidays. But as far as sides, I love stuffing. And then we've got a really good homemade mac and cheese. I mean, it's hard to get away from, the mac and cheese. But I will also say my grandmother, who has turned it over to my brother, homemade gravy that is clutch, and that goes on pretty much everything on my plate. I just douse everything in the homemade gravy.
Yes.
So definitely looking forward to that.
I am 1000% team ham. I am not a big fan of turkey. Like smoked turkey is pretty good, but like overall, like your traditional put in the oven turkey, it's not my thing. It's dry. It's just I don't know. It's just not very flavorful. It's not my thing. I love ham. Ham for Thanksgiving, ham for Christmas. Like I absolutely love ham. So ham is definitely on there. Sweet potato casserole, I absolutely love. That goes on there.
That's a good one.
Mac and cheese is amazing. Mashed potatoes, all those stuff is great. But gotta have the ham and the sweet potato casserole. Those are like my two things I look forward to the most.
Does your sweet potato casserole have marshmallows on top?
It does not. Do you guys I don't know if you guys have them there, but like Ruth Chris, have you ever heard of the restaurant Ruth Chris?
Yeah.
So my mom actually years ago got the recipe for Ruth Chris's sweet potato casserole, and that's what she makes. So it's got like cinnamon and like brown sugar and like nuts and everything all. It's amazing. And so I absolutely like look forward to that every single year. So
sounds really good.
That's what I'll be eating and then watching football. So
nice.
Yeah. So I am looking forward to that. So yeah, we had to get this in. I almost messed up and we didn't get to talk about, what we're looking forward to when it comes to that. So
I got you.
Anyways, listen, it's been a rough, year and a half, 2 years for everybody, So let's try to enjoy this holiday. Everybody enjoy spending time with your family if you can. So, something to be thankful for. You guys should all, just be thankful that we're here and that we're able to play this stupid game that we love playing, of TFS. We have it pretty easy compared to a lot of other people. So, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all of the support we get through YouTube, through Discord, through our community. It's been absolutely amazing. A lot of this is a lot of hard work, a lot of stuff people don't see. So I appreciate everybody behind the scenes for the stuff we do, because a lot of this stuff is staying up till 2 a.m. editing videos and editing content. And nobody ever sees that stuff. Nobody ever, you don't get thanked for those sorts of things, which is fine. That's why we do this. But regardless of that, I appreciate everybody at TFA. I appreciate all the contributors, the people that make the content. Cody, I could not do this without Cody. Cody is the fucking man. He helps me in terms of editing content, creating content. I feel like I spend more time talking to him than I do anybody else, even my own family, because me and him are always on doing this stuff or editing and everything else. So regardless of that, I want to thank everybody else. Ryan, I appreciate you joining us again. You are always TFA family. Maddie, absolutely appreciate you. Love doing this with you every single week. With that being said, hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Let's win some fucking money this week. I want to see somebody beat a fucking tournament here.
Can we get a Ryan we out?
That's what I was just about to say. And Ryan, we cannot get out of here. We try to do it, but it just doesn't, it just doesn't sound good. Okay, we don't got that smoothness that you got. So as we get out of here, Ryan, send us home, get us out of here.
Yeah, well, you guys got to make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel as well for the Fantasy Authority. So you get all this fantasy goodness and content. Hop over to the Discord. Like Kev said, you can hit him up, hit Maddie up. If you guys aren't already following the Godfather on Twitter, that's Fantasy Raf 13, where you can find the TFA Godfather himself, Mr. Kevin Steele, Maddie 2v2, Maddie Gets Buckets, Maddie DFS is where you can find Maddie Dickinson on Twitter, and myself, Ryan Williams. You can find me on Twitter at RyanAlexander_W. Guys, we're signing off for the Thanksgiving slate. To the TFA family, you and yours, have a happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. Get this money. Peace. We out.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you. Suck it.